Chapter 11:10. Fu Mengshan smiled bitterly as he looked at Chu Li, then at Shao Qi. He sighed and said, "Is this the famous third Miss Shao?" Chu Li smiled. "Although my martial arts was crippled, my wife's was not, so I have nothing to be afraid of." Shao Qi gently nodded to hide her shyness. Fu Mengshan smiled bitterly. "Sigh," Chu Li smiled. "Commander Fu, it's all right. Gu Yu won't forgive you." Fu Mengshan shook his head and smiled bitterly. "He's a vengeful person. Ever since he became the deputy commander, he's focused on strengthening the authority of the secret guardians to restore their former prestige. Now that you've humiliated him, he'll definitely think of ways to kill you." Chu Li scoffed. "We'll have to see what he's capable of." "What will you do if he brings people to surround the imperial residence?" Fu Mengshan frowned. "Don't think that he won't do it, he's even more unscrupulous." Chu Li said, "We'll have to see if the protectors of the imperial residence are stronger or the secret guardians." "Do you want to start a war with the secret guardians?" "Why not? You're quite bold." Fu Mengshan shook his head. "The emperor won't let you go to make an example out of you. Although he won't do anything to King An's imperial residence, it won't end well for you, young Chu." "I don't care," Chu Li said. Fu Mengshan frowned. "Actually, Gu Yu has gone too far in this matter. You're at fault too. Things have gotten out of hand." Chu Li smiled. "Commander Fu, this is a troublesome place. You should leave first. Leave Fairy's capital as soon as possible so that you won't be implicated." "All right." Fu Mengshan nodded slowly. He sighed helplessly. He felt that he really did not understand this world. Chu Li's actions were so extreme and crazy. He really did not know how to end this. In the end, he would probably end up in prison. Chu Li sent Fu Mengshan off and returned to the main hall. He nodded at Zhu Tianhua and the others in satisfaction. "Not bad, everyone will be rewarded. Go back to your duties." "Yes." Everyone fist saluted and left. They were a little excited. After teaching the secret guardians a lesson, they also calculated the resentment that they had been suppressing for a period of time. Shao Shi said, "Everyone is happy, but trouble has also come." Chu Li smiled. "It's all up to Lady Shao now. I'll enter the imperial house immediately." Xiao Shi scoffed, "I'd like to see how arrogant these people can be." She turned around and returned to Tianshu courtyard to change into her morning attire. Then, she sat in a carriage and was escorted by Shao Qi to the imperial house to look for the empress. Chu Li sat in the Tianshu courtyard, deep in thought. The way to break the stalemate was easy. It was to let Xiao Shi enter the palace to see the empress. This was the easiest way to achieve this. The fickleness of the world and the viciousness of the human heart could be seen clearly at this moment. Gu Yu was unscrupulous. Once he saw that his martial arts had been crippled and that the emperor had stripped him of his position as a secret guardian, he immediately wanted to use his method to establish his authority. He wanted to take revenge on King An's imperial residence. The previous two secret guardians had intentionally provoked him to humiliate him and beat him up. Unfortunately, he had defeated them. If he had failed to defeat the two of them, he would have become the joke of the entire fairies' capital. Chu Li's name would have been completely ruined. From then on, Chu Li of the north and Du Feng of the south would no longer exist. After that, Chun Donghai and the other 13 secret guardians purely wanted to capture him and bring him back to the secret guardians' hall for trial. They also wanted to capture some protectors from King An's imperial residence as revenge for the death of the secret guardians. Zhu Tianhua. He raised his voice. "Here." Zhu Tianhua's burly body appeared. Chu Li said, "How's the formation that I wanted you to practice?" "We're already very familiar with it," Zhu Tianhua said in a low voice. Chu Li nodded. Zhu Tianhua said, "Head Chief, are we going against the secret guardians' hall?" "I don't think so, but we must be prepared." Chu Li shook his head. If there were no accidents, Xiao Shi's trip to the imperial house to cause trouble with the empress would definitely be successful. In the end, the emperor would reprimand the secret guardians hall. No matter what, it was inappropriate for the secret guardians hall to attack King An's imperial residence so soon after King An's death. Gu Yu only had his eyes on Chu Li and Xiao Shi. He did not care about the dead King An, so he could not understand the emperor's thoughts. If Xiao Shi did not get the upper hand this time, then the emperor would be telling everyone that he had given up on King An's imperial residence. After King An's death, as a father, he would not take care of King An's wife and children. How disappointing would that be? 2 hours later, Xiao Shi and Xiao Qi returned. Xiao Shi was all smiles while Xiao Qi looked relaxed. Chu Li smiled. How was it? The emperor has reprimanded Gu Yu. Xiao Shi scoffed. Chu Li said, only a reprimand? If it was just a reprimand, it would be too lenient. Instead, it would show a kind of connivance. Gu Yu will come tomorrow to apologize, Xiao Shi said. Xiao Qi said, be careful of this person. He's really a despicable person. Chu Li nodded. The next morning, Gu Yu arrived as expected. The living room of King An's imperial residence was so quiet that a pin drop could be heard. Gu Yu sat on the armchair. His body was straight and his aura was strong. He held a cup of tea and looked at Chu Li as if he was the owner. Chief Chu, you have some complaints against me, don't you? Chu Li said faintly, why do you say that, Commander? You must think that we shouldn't have taken away your position as a secret guardian right after your martial arts were crippled. Gu Yu said, sigh. I didn't want to do that. Chu Li smiled faintly. When I entered the palace to see the emperor, I asked him to resign from my position as a secret guardian. After all, my martial arts were crippled. It would be too much to occupy the position of a secret guardian. I thanked the emperor for his understanding and he agreed. The secret guardians were not people who could be added or removed at will. A secret guardian for a day was a secret guardian for life. Secret guardians could not be removed because they knew some information that outsiders were not supposed to know. Gu Yu pretended to be surprised, but he was secretly annoyed. Chu Li's words were too infuriating. It was obvious that he was mocking Gu Yu for not having the right to decide on his matters. It was directly decided by the emperor. It was obvious that Chu Li did not respect him as a commander. Chu Li said, Commander, I believe you received the emperor's decree? Yes. Gu Yu nodded. Chu Li said faintly, Commander Gu, you've been trying to find fault with the princess to make a name for the Secret Guardians Hall and raise the status of the Secret Guardians, right? It's not to raise the status of the Secret Guardians. It's to restore the status of the Secret Guardians. Gu Yu waved his hand and said in a low voice, The princess is a woman who is not inferior to men. We admire her, but for the Secret Guardians Hall, she has gone too far. Xiao Shi was the biggest headache for him now. He actually went to the Empress and used the Empress to pressure the Emperor, forcing him to apologize. All of his efforts were in vain, and he became a laughingstock instead. It would be difficult for him to raise his head in front of the imperial residence of King An again. Chu Li said, It's not good for a secret guardian to be too domineering. Commander Gu, you should understand. Gu Yu sneered and lowered his head to drink his tea. Chapter 11:11. P.S. The 38th Alliance leader is born. The leader is Red Autumn Leaf. You're too selfish, heh? Gu Yu sneered. Chu Li said, You used to be a deputy commander, so it's understandable for you to target me. However, you're too narrow-minded now that you're a commander. You're right, Gu Yu said. There's no outsider here, so let's not beat around the bush. How can I maintain my dignity if I don't take you down as a centurion? May Air Courtyard has a high position in the Secret Guardians Hall. It's because of you that I can't order them around. Chu Li smiled. Why don't you think about why you can't order them around, Commander Gu? Isn't that obvious? Gu Yu sneered. It's because you're the one who instigated them. You've given them a new lease on life and they only obey you. My words are bullsh*. It's ridiculous that a commander can't order his subordinates around. Chu Li shook his head. They only respect those who are capable. Commander Gu, you may have a high position but you're not that important to the Secret Guardians. They often go through fire and water. If you're incompetent, it's useless even if they break their legs. They might even put themselves in danger. Are you saying that I'm incompetent? Gu Yu narrowed his eyes and sneered. Chu Li said, What abilities do you have? Are you as accurate as Commander Fu, as fair and just as Commander Su, or as observant as I am? You're only valued by the Emperor. What benefits or contributions do you have to the Secret Guardians Hall? You're quite the sharp-tongued one, Gu Yu sneered. Chu Li shook his head. You obviously don't have any skills, but you're unwilling to be mediocre and insist on doing something earth-shattering. You don't know that the Secret Guardians Hall has to do things quietly and not attract attention. You've done it the wrong way and stirred up the Secret Guardians Hall into a mess. Gu Yu's face darkened. Chu Li continued, You can't establish your authority with your abilities. You use people to establish your authority as if everyone will respect you if you defeat this person or kill that person. You don't know that they're secretly mocking you and looking down on you. Shut up, Gu Yu shouted. Chu Li smirked. Am I right? Shut up. Gu Yu gritted his teeth and glared at him coldly. Be careful of your loose lips. Chu Li could not help but laugh. Look, you're doing this again. You're always trying to oppress others. Do you think you can do whatever you want just because you're favored by the Emperor? Don't you know that the Emperor's favor is the most unreliable thing? Today you are prosperous, but tomorrow you might be hated by the Emperor. Shut up. Gu Yu slammed the table, sending the teacup flying and spilling a few drops of tea. Chu Li smiled and said no more. Gu Yu took a deep breath and suppressed his anger. He had never heard such harsh words in his life. The Emperor was amiable towards him, and the princes also welcomed him with smiles. Among the others, there was no one who ridiculed and criticized him like Chu Li. Chu Li's words were like knives and swords, every word hitting the vital points, and was extremely vicious. Chu Li said, You're favored by the Emperor. Although I can't compare to him, I'm not someone you can easily bully. Prince, you rashly bullied me. Do you think that the Emperor can bully me just because he took away my secret guardian status? You're so eager for quick success that you can't see the situation clearly. You can't wait to take care of King An's imperial residence. Don't you think about what the Emperor will think? With a mind like yours, you really can't hold the position of commander of the Secret Guardians Hall. If you know what's good for you, you should resign from your position as commander before you make any big mistakes. You can just be a deputy commander and show off your power. Maybe the Emperor will still remember your good deeds. If you make a few mistakes, the Emperor's favor will be almost gone. When that happens, what will happen to you? Gu Yu took a deep breath and said coldly, Do you think I don't dare to kill you? Chu Li laughed. You dare to kill me? I'd like to see how capable the assassins of the Secret Guardians Hall are. However, Commander Gu, if you want to make a move, don't blame me for being rude. So what if you're a cripple? Gu Yu said faintly. He was in a better mood. He suddenly felt that there was no need for him to listen to Chu Li. A cripple was only left with the ability to talk. He would not be able to withstand a single blow. There was no need for him to take it to heart. Chu Li smiled. You can try. Let's see if I can kill you. How arrogant! Gu Yu scoffed. At that moment, Xiao Shi and Xiao Qi came in. They were dressed in spotless white tunic. Suru Yangsu and Menglan were beside them. Gu Yu greets the princess. Gu Yu stood up and fist saluted. He said in a serious tone, I failed to restrain my subordinates and offended King An's imperial residence. It's a sin. Please forgive me, princess. Xiao Shi did not even look at him. She gracefully sat on the main seat while Xiao Qi sat beside her. Her movements were graceful and pleasing to the eye. Suru and the other two stood behind them and quietly sized Guyu up. Chu Li smiled. Guyu's expression stiffened. He put down his hands. Head steward Zhu personally served the tea and quietly withdrew. Chu Li smiled. Princess, Commander Gu is here to apologize. It seems like he's very reluctant. Xiao Shi cast a sidelong glance at Gu Yu and said, I dare not. I'll be grateful if Commander Gu didn't order the imperial residence to be demolished. I'm an orphan and a widow. With His Royal Highness gone, there's no one to call the shots. They deserve to be bullied. Gu Yu frowned. He was secretly annoyed. She was pointing at his nose and scolding him for bullying the weak. However, King An's imperial residence was not weak. Instead, they crippled the secret guardian's hall and even a centurion. It was a huge loss. Moreover, Chen Donghai was his right-hand man. If he wanted to control the secret guardian's hall, he needed Chen Donghai's help. Otherwise, he would not know what to do if he was in the dark and did not know anything. Crippling Chen Donghai was equivalent to breaking his right-hand man. It was a huge loss. Chen Donghai took advantage of the situation and still acted like a good boy. Now that he had lost his men, he had to apologize. It was intolerable. Xiao Shi calmly replied, Please, Commander Gu. I don't dare to accept your apology. Please be merciful and spare my life, Commander Gu. Gu Yu gritted his teeth. Chu Li coughed softly. Commander Gu, are you dissatisfied with the Emperor's decree? He saw that Gu Yu was about to explode in anger and flipped the table. Thus, he followed up with a sentence that hit the nail on the head. Gu Yu's entire body instantly relaxed, and he swallowed his breath. If he really left in a huff, Xiao Shi would definitely go to the imperial house and complain. He would inevitably be reprimanded by the emperor and forced to apologize. Instead of that, it was better to bear with it. Chu Li smiled. Commander Gu, do you think I'm trying to intimidate you with empty words? Do you know the identity of my wife? Who doesn't know the third lady of the public house? Gu Yu said coldly. Chu Li said, If my wife kills the secret guardian's hall and cripples a few grandmasters, or even you, how do you think the emperor will punish my wife? Gu Yu looked at the cold Xiao Qi and his heart trembled. The High Duke's public house had a high status. If Xiao Qi really did that, the emperor would definitely punish her. However, the punishment would not be too severe. At most, he would fine her with some money or silver, but he would not hurt her. Chu Li smiled. Commander Gu, you should know if my wife can do it with her martial arts. Chapter 11-12. Xiao Shi squinted her eyes at him. She hated Gu Yu to the core. He took advantage of the fact that Chu Li had lost his martial arts to humiliate and bully him. This kind of person should be killed directly. How could a few words of apology be enough to appease her hatred? Chu Li coughed softly. Princess, forget it. We can't really kill him. Xiao Shi scoffed. I'm not willing to let him go just like that. Chu Li pondered. How about we get him to compensate us with something? Sure. Xiao Shi replied. Chu Li asked, How about the primary heaven pill from Green Deer Cliff? Not bad. Xiao Shi nodded. Chu Li turned to look at Gu Yu. Gu Yu shook his head solemnly. Forgive me for being powerless. The primary heaven pill is a secret medicine of Green Deer Cliff. It's rare, and I heard that the required spirit medicine has been lost. Every pill used means one less. It's impossible to get the reversal pill without a good relationship. Then you should go back, Xiao Shi said. Gu Yu asked, Princess, why do you have to make things difficult for me? Have you forgotten how you made things difficult for us? Xiao Shi snapped. You're the only one who can make things difficult for us, but we can't make things difficult for you? Sigh. Gu Yu sighed and closed fist saluted. Princess, if I can get the primary heaven pill, I'll definitely send it to you, but I'm powerless. Please forgive me, Princess. Then cut the crap and scram. Xiao Shi waved her hand impatiently. Gu Yu's face turned pale and his hair stood on end. He had never been humiliated like this since he was young. It was intolerable. Xiao Shi took a sip of tea and did not look at him. Just as Gu Yu was about to explode, Shao Qi said, "Forget it. Don't make things difficult for him. It seems like we really can't get it." "Yes, thank you, Madam Chu." Gu Yu took a deep breath to suppress his anger and closed fist saluted. Shao Qi said, "I hope you can control your subordinates and don't disturb the peace of King An's imperial residence." "Of course," Gu Yu replied. "You're so kind." Xiao Shi glared at Shao Qi. Chu Li chuckled. The three of them cooperated very well, as if they could read each other's minds. If he did not make things difficult for Gu Yu would bear a grudge against him. In the future, he would find an opportunity to do something behind the scenes. It would be very difficult for King An's imperial residence to find out. It would be very troublesome. With such an excessive request, Gu Yu was unable to fulfill it. Furthermore, Shao Qi and Shao Shi played the good cop and the bad cop, causing Gu Yu to almost give up on the idea. Gu Yu awkwardly left King An's imperial residence. In the evening, Chu Li was practicing his swordsmanship in the backyard. Ling Qiu, who was dressed in a light green outfit, walked in. She held a long sword in her hand and her face was sullen. Her beautiful face was tense, and she stood still next to Chu Li. It was obvious that she had something to say. Chu Li turned to look at her and stopped his sword. Ling Qiu said, "Chief Director, tomorrow is the hunting ceremony." Chu Li nodded and smiled. "Don't you love the hunting ceremony? Why are you unhappy?" Although he killed King An, he did not feel guilty towards Ling Qiu. Instead, he was very calm. He had never associated Ling Qiu with King An. King An deserved to die. Ling Qiu, Ling Qing, and the others did not have any feelings for King An. Although they were father and daughter, they rarely met. Even if they did, they would only exchange a few words as if they were strangers. "I love the hunting ceremony, but they didn't invite us." Ling Qiu waved her long sword in dissatisfaction. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. "They didn't invite you?" "Yes, they only invited us." Ling Qiu scoffed. "They've gone too far." Chu Li frowned. "Who's in charge this time?" "It seems like Granduncle Bao is busy, so Uncle King is in charge." Ling Qiu said, "It must be that B***starred Ling Tao's doing." Chu Li pondered. "Do we have to be invited?" "Yes." Ling Qiu nodded helplessly. Chu Li said, "He thinks that it's not appropriate for the imperial residents to attend the hunting ceremony since His Royal Highness has just passed away, right?" They won't be so kind. They must think that the imperial residence has declined and that we're not worthy of them." Ling Qiu waved her long sword and said hatefully. Chu Li shook his head and laughed. "You're thinking too much. That must be it. They've gone too far." Ling Qiu scoffed. Chu Li said, "It's fine if we don't attend this time. We'll just attend the next time. If we do, people will talk behind our backs. If they were to attend the hunting ceremony this time, they would definitely be greeted with sympathetic gazes. There might even be people who would take the opportunity to cause trouble." "I want Mother and the princess to relax," Ling Qiu said. "My mother has been depressed. She'll be fine after a while." "Is Princess Shui very close to His Royal Highness?" Chu Li asked. "It's not that they're close. She just feels guilty and short of breath without a man at home." Ling Qiu pouted. "Actually, I can live without a man. What's the big deal? Mother is so weak." Chu Li said, "Princess Shui's thinking is right. Without His Royal Highness, many things are inconvenient. Let's forget about this hunting ceremony. We'll talk about it next time." "All right," Ling Qiu said reluctantly. Chu Li shook his head. "Where's Miss Qing?" "She's practicing her swordsmanship," Ling Qiu said. "She's preparing to teach Ling Tao a lesson the next time we meet." "All right, teach him a lesson," Chu Li smiled. "He's been beaten up so many times. Hasn't he learned his lesson? He's an asshole. He'll definitely take revenge when he gets the chance." Lung Qiu scoffed. This time, he must have seen that father is gone. That's why he didn't greet us. Chu Li pondered. In the end, he shook his head. You'll know the next time we meet. He felt that it was unlikely. Ling Tao was now fawning over Ling Qiu. It was not a romantic relationship. It was more like a friendship forged through fighting. However, he was too lazy to care about these trivial matters. Even if Ling Tao was lazy and took the opportunity to bully the imperial residents of Qing'an, it was just a child's play. It was not worth fighting. After talking with Ling Qiu for a while, he returned to Tianshu courtyard. He found Princess Shui and Princess Song there. They had returned to their parents' home a while ago. They did not stay in the imperial residence. After returning, they came to Xiao Shi's place to talk. Once Qing'an was gone, they could only listen to Xiao Shi. Xiao Shi had the final say in the imperial residence. After all, the title was fundamental. Moreover, they had a guilty conscience. Xiao Shi was full of confidence. In addition to Xiao Shi's identity, they felt safe staying in Tianshu courtyard. Seeing him enter, the two princesses nodded to greet him. Princess Shui smiled sweetly. Head Chief, you came at the right time. We were just discussing. Chu Li smiled. Princess Shui, what are you discussing? I think we should bring the young prince back to the imperial residence. Princess Shui said. Chu Li was stunned. Suan? Yes. Princess Shui said. Now that the imperial residence doesn't have a male master, everyone is bullied. If Suan comes back, even if he's just a child, it'll be justifiable. Suan is in isolated cultivation at the Titanium Temple. Chu Li pondered. He's at a crucial point in his cultivation. He can't come back now. Princess Shui said, cultivation can't be done anywhere. Our imperial residence has a cultivation courtyard too. Princess Song nodded. I heard that the imperial residence's cultivation courtyard can speed up cultivation. Why don't you go in and cultivate, head chief? Chu Li shook his head and smiled. That's the Royal Highness's courtyard. How can I overstep my boundaries? The Royal Highness isn't here anymore. There's nothing to do anyway. Princess Song said. Chu Li shook his head. If he did not cultivate the concentration talisman, he would naturally covet the cultivation courtyard. However, he had the concentration talisman. The cultivation courtyard did not matter to him. After all, he was just a head chief. He was not a royal highness. Once he entered, the emperor might take the opportunity to attack him. Princess Shui rolled her eyes at him. You're too old-fashioned. Does that mean the young prince can't come back? Chu Li frowned and shook his head. Not now. I'll ask him after he's in isolated cultivation. The Titanium Temple won't let him go now. Chapter 11-13. As Princess Song sighed, Gu Yu from the Secret Guardians Hall sighed as well. Chen Donghai, who had been crippled of his martial arts, stood in the main hall of the Secret Guardians Hall with an ugly expression on his face. Gu Yu asked in a low voice, not a single clue? Chen Donghai gulped and smiled bitterly. Commander, the culprit is using the martial arts of the Tempest Temple, but it's only the most common fist technique of the Tempest Temple. It's long been spread to the outside world, and most people in the martial arts world know this fist technique. It's really impossible to identify the culprit from this fist technique. Gu Yu did not give up. What about inner energy? I can't see anything with my inner force either. Chen Donghai sighed. This person's inner energy is fierce and domineering. He killed with a single punch. Minister Li's entire family of 35 people was killed with a single punch. What about the Li residence's protectors? Gu Yu scoffed. They can't be killed with a single punch, can they? Another punch. Chen Donghai nodded and said, that's why I said that this person is a top-notch master who is extremely rare. Maybe what? Gu Yu's face darkened as he said impatiently, if you have something to say, say it. Maybe he really is a master from the Tempest Temple, Chen Donghai said helplessly. Gu Yu said, arrest them even if they're from the Tempest Temple. This case is too big, everyone in Fairy's capital knows about it. If we can't catch the culprit, the secret Guardians Hall might as well guard the Imperial Mausoleum. Yes. Chen Donghai nodded helplessly with a bitter expression on his face. Gu Yu raised his head and asked, "Oh right, has Commander Fu left?" Chen Donghai said, "I think he just left yesterday. It was very sad. Not a single person went to send him off." "Humph, he doesn't know how to behave himself," Gu Yu sneered. "Didn't Head Chief Chu go?" "No." Chen Donghai shook his head. "Chu Li has never left his house. Also, I heard that he didn't invite anyone from King An's imperial residence to the hunting ceremony this time. It seems like he intentionally left King An's imperial residence behind. He took pleasure in the misfortune of others. When he thought about how Shao Qi had crippled his cultivation level, he was filled with hatred. Unfortunately, he knew that there was no way he could take revenge. Shao Qi was the lady of the High Duke's public house. No matter how daring he was, he could not kill Shao Qi. If he wanted to cripple her, his martial arts skills were not enough, so he could only swallow his anger. Fortunately, Commander Gu saw that he was reliable and could communicate with the upper and lower levels, so he continued to use him. But now, he could only give advice from the side and could not personally go to work. He had already become a cripple. Gu Yu scoffed. "Let's have a dogfight. The more the merrier." That's right, Chen Donghai smiled. "Where are the fellows from Mei Air Courtyard? Or not?" Gu Yu asked coldly. Chen Donghai said, "This time we offered a generous reward and they did take action. They went over to check the scene, but they all shook their heads and said that they were powerless. They couldn't find the murderer, and the murderer didn't leave any clues behind. They're also a bunch of good-for-nothings." Gu Yu sneered and frowned. Could it be that they didn't work hard enough? "That won't happen." Chen Donghai shook his head. "They don't care about this. Since they've accepted the mission, they won't be fooled. They'll definitely do their best. This time, they've probably been ordered by Chu Li to not go against the commander anymore." Despicable. Gu Yu slammed the armrest of his armchair and gritted his teeth. In the end, he sighed dejectedly. "Princess Xiao, that crazy woman, really can't be provoked. Chu Li is quite tactful." "Yes." Chen Donghai nodded. As they spoke, footsteps were heard from outside. Liang whispered from outside, "Commander, there are Imperial House protectors outside requesting an audience." "Let them in," Gu Yu said. "Yes." Liang responded and quickly brought 2 Imperial House protectors in black into the main hall. Gu Yu stood up and fist saluted. He forced a smile. "Elder Zhou, Elder Hu, I'm sorry for troubling you to come here personally. Master Gu, we're here on the Emperor's orders to see the progress." The 2 black-robed elders chuckled. "Is there any progress?" "Not bad, there's some progress." Gu Yu smiled. The thin black-robed elder said in a deep voice, "The Emperor has decreed that the secret Guardians Hall must solve this case within 3 days and avenge Minister Li's family." 3 days? Chen Donghai cried out involuntarily. The 2 black-robed elders turned to look at him. Chen Donghai hurriedly fist saluted. "Greetings, sirs. 3 days is too short, I'm afraid." Gu Yu nodded helplessly. "To be honest, I haven't made much progress on my end. The murderer is a top-notch master. He's ferocious and overbearing. He killed 1 person with 1 punch and none of the 35 people in the Li residence were lucky enough to escape. No one saw what he looked like and we couldn't tell what martial arts he cultivated. The Emperor doesn't care about these things." The thin black-robed elder shook his head. "The impact of this case is too bad. If it's not solved as soon as possible, everyone in Fairy's capital and even the Ji dynasty will lose confidence in the imperial court. No matter what, it's impossible to solve this case in 3 days." Chen Donghai smiled bitterly. Sirs, solving this case isn't as easy as you think. Do you dare to say this to the Emperor? The other chubby black-robed elder said impatiently, 3 days is 3 days. There's no room for negotiation. If you can't do it, then you'll be punished. Sigh. Chen Donghai's expression was bitter. Guyu frowned and his face was gloomy. All right, we've already passed on the edict. I can't help you with the rest. The thin elder fist saluted and was about to leave. Chen Donghai quickly said, Sirs, you can actually help us. Guyu turned his head and glared at him, hinting him to stop talking nonsense. The 2 black-robed elders were internal guards of the imperial house. They usually stayed by the emperor's side and were sent out this time to show the emperor's concern about this case. If these 2 elders were unhappy and slandered the emperor, they would be in big trouble. All right, tell me, what can this old man do to help? The chubby old man smiled and said, If I really can help, this old man will not be stingy. We'll need someone to solve this case. Chen Donghai said, It won't be difficult to solve this case with this person. Who? Guyu asked curiously. The 2 Imperial House internal guards looked at him curiously. Tell me, who's capable? The chubby black-robed elder smiled. Chen Donghai looked at Guyu and gritted his teeth. Chu Li. Which Chu Li? The black-robed elder asked. Chen Donghai hesitated and looked at Guyu. Guyu frowned. The head chief of King An's imperial residence, Chu Li? Yes. Chen Donghai nodded. We don't have any clues, but Chu Li might have some. If he helps, he'll definitely solve this case and catch the culprit. Chu Li's martial arts has been crippled. He's useless. Guyu said coldly. Chen Donghai said, Even if he's crippled, his eyesight is still there. Guyu glanced at him and knew what he was thinking. He wanted to drag Chu Li down with him so that he could be their scapegoat. Chapter 11:14. Sirs, Chu Li doesn't belong to us secret guardians anymore. Moreover, he was just stripped of his position by the Emperor. I'm afraid he's still resentful and might not agree to help. We can only ask the Emperor for a decree. It's useless for us to beg him. Chen Donghai said with a fist salute. Oh, that Chu Li. The chubby elder nodded. The one who was sent to the Imperial Mausoleum? He came back a while ago? That's him. Chen Donghai hurriedly said, Although he's arrogant, he's truly capable. If we want to solve this case in 3 days, we'll need him to do it himself. Other than him, I'm afraid no one else in Fairy's capital can do it. Is this young man that good? The chubby elder smiled and shook his head. You can't solve the case without him? It's not luck that he managed to become a centurion from a normal secret guardian in just half a year. Chen Donghai tried his best to put in a good word for Chu Li so that he could convince the 2 to help him get a decree from the Emperor. Then, he would drag Chu Li over. He did everything he could to drag Chu Li into this mess. Firstly, he harbored resentment and wanted Chu Li to suffer along with him. Secondly, he had a faint hope that if anyone could solve this case within 3 days, it would definitely be Chu Li. No one else had that kind of ability. After all, the Emperor had issued a decree to solve the case in 3 days. If they could not do it, everyone would be punished. Perhaps someone would be sent to guard the Imperial Mausoleum, or the commander would lose the Emperor's favor. The Emperor's favor was crucial for the commanders of Secret Guardians Hall. If they lost the Emperor's favor, their position would be unstable. Their honor and disgrace depended on the commander. If the commander lost power, they would be finished too. Just like Chu Li, he was forced to leave Secret Guardians Hall because of Fu Mengshan and Su Huanda's loss of power. The 2 elders looked at Guyu. Guyu nodded helplessly. Chu Li is indeed a powerful person. He was originally a centurion, but the Emperor took away his secret guardian status. Since he took away the secret guardian status, can he help you solve the case? The thin elder asked. His eyes were bright as if he could see through Guyu and Chen Donghai. He knew the nature of these secret guardians hall people. They were like wolves when it came to taking credit. How could they allow others to do it? He would not be able to see any merit in this kind of thing, and it would only bring him trouble instead. If he could avoid it, he would try to avoid it. He might not be recommending Chu Li out of good intentions. If Chu Li failed, the two of them would be implicated instead. Gu Yu replied, since it's His Majesty's order, he has to obey it even if he's resentful. After all, he's a subject. The thin old man muttered. The chubby old man smiled and said, all right, I'm just mentioning it. Let's talk about it in front of the Emperor and see what this Chu Li is really capable of. The thin old man glared at him. The chubby old man said, if this case can't be solved, based on His Majesty's intentions, I guess all of you will be finished. Xiao Gu, you won't be able to get any benefits either. I'm afraid you won't be able to keep your position. Gu Yu's expression changed. Old Zhou, the thin elder said in a deep voice. The chubby old man chuckled. It's rare for little Gu to be here. I should at least give little Gu a word of advice at a crucial time. The thin elder said, don't listen to his nonsense. It's not reliable. But it will not be a light punishment. You should try your best to solve the case first. Yes, Gu Yu said in a deep voice. Both of them were the Emperor's personal protectors. Elder Zhou would not spout nonsense. It seemed that his position in the Emperor's heart was in danger and needed to be reversed. He must invite Chu Li back. Ever since he entered the secret Guardian's Hall, he had not made any contributions and had disappointed the Emperor. He had also heard about Chu Li's prowess from others. Even Chen Donghai, who hated Chu Li, was amazed by Chu Li's abilities and felt ashamed of himself. If not for that, Mayer Courtyard would not have been so difficult to deal with. Chu Li was practicing his swordsmanship in the courtyard. He was starting to see results when he integrated the less ultimate sword into the 7 forms of godly sword. The less ultimate sword was exceptionally mysterious. The more he comprehended it, the more he felt it was exquisite and the more he admired the ultimate temple. The next time he had the chance, he must visit the ultimate temple and personally experience their less ultimate sword. He might even learn the ultimate sword technique. The ultimate sword technique was a sword formation. As long as he learned it, he could form a formation with his fellow disciples. He had seen it before and it was indeed exquisite beyond imagination. The Fu dynasty's martial arts and the Ji dynasty's martial arts were not the same, but it was indeed more exquisite and powerful. The imperial edict has arrived. Chu Li received the edict. A loud voice suddenly came from outside. Chu Li frowned. He hated the imperial edict and hated the emperor. Once the imperial edict was sent out, nothing good would come out of it. Shao Qi appeared and saw that he was standing still. Aren't you going to receive the edict? Chu Li sighed. Just say that I'm not here. Do you really want to do that? Shao Qi asked. Chu Li said, it's best to hide. All right. Shao Qi nodded. I'll go inform them. Go hide. Chu Li nodded. Shao Qi left his courtyard and went to the imperial residence's main gate. 2 elders in black stood at the bottom of the steps of the imperial residence. They looked stern and dignified. They were Zhou and Hu, the ones who passed the edict to Gu Yu earlier. Where's Chu Li? Thin Elder asked. He frowned when he saw the imperial residence's main gate open and a fairy-like woman came out. It was not Chu Li. Shao Qi fist saluted and said coldly, My husband is not in the imperial residence. May I know what the emperor wants? Not here? Thin Elder asked, How can he not be in the imperial residence? My husband has gone to another place to cultivate in isolation. Shao Qi said, Forgive him for not receiving the edict. The chubby elder asked, Can he rush back in time? Shao Qi shook her head. He won't be able to rush back in time. Even if he gets the news, it'll take 5 to 6 days. Why did he go to such a faraway place to cultivate in isolation? Thin Elder frowned. Shao Qi said, Fairy's capital is full of trifling matters and he can't calm down. He can only cultivate in peace and recover his cultivation level as soon as possible when he's far away. 5 to 6 days. The chubby elder shook his head. It's too late, Shao-Chi said. May I know what the emperor wants? He wants Chu-Li to investigate a case. My husband is no longer a secret guardian of the Secret Guardians Hall, so he has no right to investigate. Moreover, he has lost his martial arts, so he won't be able to investigate the case even if he wants to. Please report this to the emperor, Shao-Chi said. If that's the case, we can only report it as it is. The chubby elder laughed. The two of them glanced at King An's imperial residence and vaguely felt that Chu-Li was in the imperial residence, but he was avoiding the edict. This little guy was really bold, but he couldn't expose this matter himself. The two of them returned to the imperial house and went to Chongwon Hall to reply to the edict. There was only an old servant in Chongwon Hall who was holding a horsetail whisk and standing in a corner. The Ji dynasty's emperor, Leng Wufeng, was sitting on the dragon throne. He was dressed in a bright yellow robe and had his hands on the table. He asked, "Isn't this young man coming out to receive the edict?" Thin Elder answered, "He said that he went to cultivate in isolation outside Fairy's capital." "Humph," Leng Wufeng scoffed. "He has a good excuse. Emperor, is he really hiding in the residence?" The chubby elder asked. "He can't be that bold, can he?" Chapter 11-15. Due to their close relationship with the emperor, they did not hesitate to ask for the reason. Leng Wufeng sighed. "He wants a primary heaven pill to recover his martial art. If I don't give him the primary heaven pill, he won't take the case. This young fella is too bold. How dare he threaten the emperor?" The chubby elder laughed. The thin elder frowned. "Isn't he afraid that the emperor will be enraged and send him back to the imperial mausoleum? I wish I could send him back to the imperial mausoleum." Leng Wufeng scoffed. "But King An's imperial residence can't do without him now. The orphans and widows are pitiful, they can only rely on him. If he punished Chu-Li, who was the head chief of King An's imperial residence, what would the others think? If that happened, King An's imperial residence would be in a more difficult situation. It would be like adding snow to snow, and he could not bring himself to do that. That's why he's so unscrupulous, isn't it?" the thin old man said in a deep voice. Leng Wufeng shook his head. "He's strong without desires. He doesn't want to get involved in the fairy's capital. He's satisfied to be the son-in-law of the High Duke's public house. A hero's home is the grave of a gentle man. I can't wait to throw him into the imperial mausoleum right now. What should we do?" The thin elder frowned. "This fella is a pain in the neck, he's hard to deal with. The only thing we can do now is to use the primary heaven pill." Leng Wufeng shook his head and laughed. "Although I'm the emperor, I can't do whatever I want. I'll still be forced by this fella to hand over the primary heaven pill. Is there no one better than him?" The thin elder scoffed. "There are so many powerful people in the fairy's capital. In terms of investigating cases, nobody can compare to him." Leng Wufeng nodded. "He's solved all the cases that he handled. No matter how difficult the case is, he can always solve it. He's that good." The chubby elder chuckled. "He's a strange person indeed. It's a common problem for him to be arrogant. Since he's so capable, it's understandable for him to be a little arrogant, isn't it?" Leng Wufeng nodded. "As long as he can solve the case in 3 days, it's fine to give him a primary heaven pill. How can you confuse what the emperor gave him with what he forced the emperor to give? This kind of official should be severely punished." The thin elder said hatefully. "If we punish him, where are we going to find people to solve the case?" The fat old man laughed. "Your Majesty, he's a genius after all. Don't lower yourself to his level." Leng Wufeng nodded. "Then shall we make another trip?" The fat old man smiled and said, Shall we give him the primary heaven pill? He has the nerve to come out? The thin elder snorted and said, Didn't you say that he would only be able to return in 5 to 6 days? Now that we have given him the heavenly yuan pill, he will immediately come out. Isn't it obvious that he is lying? That's true. The fat old man nodded. It seems that solving the case in 3 days is impossible. Let's take a look, Leng Wufeng said. Yes. The thin elder said in a deep voice. Leng Wufeng ordered, Men, bring me a heaven primary pill. Yes. The old attendant floated out. After a while, he returned with a small box in his hand. It was dark purple and faintly glowed. One look and anyone could tell that it was not an ordinary object. The old attendant presented it with both hands, and Leng Wufeng took it and opened it. He stared blankly at the pill and looked like he was reminiscing, then he sighed. I obtained this primary heaven pill when I was young and roamed the martial arts world. I didn't expect to use it today. Your Majesty roamed the martial arts world when you were young? Of course. Leng Wufeng smiled. Your Majesty would be neglecting your duty if you know nothing about the martial arts world. After all, the martial arts world is a place that you can't avoid. Did you make a name for yourself, Your Majesty? The fat old man asked curiously. Leng Wufeng shook his head. I didn't make a name for myself. I'm just a nobody. Based on Your Majesty's martial arts, that shouldn't be the case. You must be keeping a low profile on purpose, right? The fat old man chuckled. Leng Wufeng shook his head. My martial arts back then weren't that great. He looked like he was reminiscing. There was a hint of confusion and melancholy on his face, but there was also a hint of sweetness as he smiled faintly. The two old men knew that he was thinking about women when they saw his expression. The fat old man was curious. He asked with a smile, Your Majesty, did you meet a woman you like? Yes. Leng Wufeng admitted right away. I met a stunning beauty back then, and we got along well. Unfortunately, in the end, he shook his head and smiled bitterly. Emperors have the least freedom in the world. He then waved his hand. Forget it, let's not talk about this. This primary heaven pill is very important to me, so I really don't want to take it out unless I have no other choice but to give it to him. This be asterisk starred. The thin old man scoffed. Actually, it's fine if you don't give it to him. Doesn't he have a wife? Give his wife a small reward, and he'll come out to help obediently. This was both a reward and a threat. If he did not agree to it, he would punish his wife. They had just gotten married, so it was a sweet time. His wife was the most important to him, so she could directly grasp his Achilles heel. Forget it, he needs martial arts too, or he'll have an excuse if he can't solve the case. Leng Wufeng shook his head. His martial arts were crippled because of my order. Helping him recover his martial arts will be considered as compensation. Your Majesty, you're broad-minded. I'm impressed. The fat old man fist saluted. The two of them arrived at King An's imperial residence again. This time they did not make a big deal out of it. Xiao Shi and Xiao Qi personally came out to welcome them. The two of them entered the main hall, sat down, and took a sip of tea. The thin old man placed the purple box on the table and pushed it in front of Xiao Qi. Madam Chu, Princess Xiao, we're following the Emperor's orders to hand this primary heaven pill to Chief Chu so that he can solve Minister Li's case within 3 days. Solve the case in 3 days? Xiao Qi frowned. Xiao Shi smiled. Sure, no problem. He'll be back soon. The fat old man chuckled. Isn't it going to take 6 to 7 days at the earliest? His isolated cultivation is quite far away from Fairy's capital. We have our own ways, Xiao Shi said impatiently. As long as Chu Li recovers his martial arts, he'll be back tonight and can investigate the case tomorrow. Oh! The fat old man smiled at her. The thin old man said in a deep voice, Could it be that he is hiding in the prince's mansion? You're imagining things. You're gauging the heart of a gentleman with your own mean measure. Xiao Shi scoffed. We'll send a carrier pigeon to deliver the pill. He'll recover his martial arts after consuming it and will be back in no time. If he doesn't recover his martial arts, it'll take him 6 to 7 days on horseback. I see. The fat old man laughed. The two of them were even more certain that Chu Li was hiding in the imperial residence. This young man was extremely daring. Since the primary heaven pill is here, we won't keep you here for long. Hurry up and give it to him, Xiao Shi said. Don't waste time. If you can't solve the case, you'll betray the emperor's trust. That's right. The thin old man stood up and fist saluted. Consume the spirit pill. If you can't solve the case in 3 days, you'll be letting this primary heaven pill down. That's right. Xiao Shi waved her hand and smiled. Chapter 11:16. P.S. Update complete, double monthly ticket for the last hour. Early in the morning, outside the Secret Guardians' Hall, 2 young Secret Guardians stood majestically next to 2 large stone lions. Their hands were on the hilts of their swords, and they looked like they were about to unsheathe their swords at any time. Their eyes were bright and threatening, and they were filled with murderous intent. Chu Li was dressed in a white robe. He approached them leisurely and at ease. When the 2 young Secret Guardians saw Chu Li, they were overjoyed and hurriedly went forward to fist salute. Greetings, Centurion Chu. Chu Li waved his hand. I'm no longer a centurion. You don't have to address me like that. Centurion Chu, please come in. The 2 of them smiled. Chu Li said, It's better if you go and inform them that I want to see the commander. There's no need. Centurion Chu, you're not an outsider. Just go in directly. Haha, I'm an outsider now. Don't let me in like this. It's inevitable that the commander will fly into a rage. You guys better go and report this. Alright. The 2 helplessly agreed. A moment later, Chen Donghai arrived with large strides. Before he had even stepped out of the main door, he had already made a fist salute from afar. It's a great honor to have Chief Chu here. Please come in quickly, the commander is already waiting. Chu Li fist saluted and smiled at Chen Donghai before entering the main door. The 2 of them walked side by side to the hall. Chen Donghai did not show any signs of resentment as he hid it very well. However, he could not hide it from Chu Li's eyes. Chu Li knew that Chen Donghai could not let out his resentment. Instead, Chen Donghai was looking for an opportunity to make things difficult for him and drag him down with him. Although he had seized the opportunity to extort the Emperor's primary heaven pill, which would allow him to rightfully recover his martial arts and was a blessing in disguise, he was not prepared to let Chen Donghai off. Seeing how the 2 of them were getting along so well, no one would have thought that they had been fighting each other to the death just 2 days ago. Chen Donghai's martial arts had been crippled by Chu Li's wife, so their hatred for each other ran deeper than the sea. Chu Li said nonchalantly, Centurion Chen, if you want to recover your martial arts, you might as well consume a primary heaven pill. Heavenly Yuan pill. Chen Donghai laughed bitterly. That thing isn't something we can come across. It's a secret medicine unique to Green Deer Cliff. It's extremely rare, so we don't dare to hope for it. Chu Li nodded. That's true. Chief Chu, I see that your martial arts have recovered, right? Not bad. Did he take the Heavenly Yuan pill? Exactly. Where did you get the Heavenly Yuan pill? It's hard to refuse a gift from His Majesty. Chu Li said casually. He wanted to announce it on purpose. The Emperor was afraid of losing face and did not want to leak it out, but he wanted everyone to know. This way, everyone would know the Emperor's support for the imperial residence of King'an. He was the head chief of the imperial residence of King'an. Why would the Emperor treat him so well and bestow him the primary heaven pill? It was obvious that he was afraid that others would bully the imperial residence of King'an. Everyone could think of this. Bestowed by His Majesty. Chen Donghai choked on his breath and almost fainted from anger. Both of them had their martial arts crippled. However, one of them was completely crippled, and it would be extremely difficult for him to start cultivating again. Who knew how much effort he would have to put in? Yet, the other one had directly consumed a heavenly yuan pill and immediately recovered his martial arts. How infuriating and how much despair was this! Chu Li smiled and said, "Don't rush, take your time. The second round of cultivation will be much faster than the first. I believe that you'll be able to cultivate inner energy in less than a month, and you'll be able to master it in about a year." Chen Donghai wanted to slap Chu Li to death, but he still wore a smile on his face. "Yes, the second round of cultivation will be much faster. Centurion Chen, you're still young, you can catch up," Chu Li said. "Yes, yes." Chen Donghai's smile became more bitter. He hated Chu Li to the core, but he could only endure it. He was no match for Chu Li now. The two soon arrived at the main hall. Gu Yu was sitting on the armchair in the middle of the hall. He stood up and gave a fist salute. "Chief Chu, thank you," Chu Li said. "You don't have to be so polite, Commander. Let's go there and have a look." He was too lazy to talk to Gu Yu as it was useless. It was enough for him to maintain his politeness on the surface. He knew that Gu Yu wanted to kill him. "All right." Gu Yu secretly sighed in relief. He looked at Chu Li and was stunned when he realized that Chu Li's cultivation level had been restored. "Chief Chu, you've recovered your martial arts?" Chu Li smiled. "Yes, the Emperor bestowed the primary heaven pill to help me recover my martial arts. I can't repay the Emperor's kindness. The Emperor really does favor Chief Chu." Gu Yu forced a smile. He felt bitter. The primary heaven pill was not an ordinary spirit pill that he could not find himself. He did not expect the Emperor to give Chu Li the primary heaven pill. Chu Li gave a fist salute in the direction of the imperial house with a smile. It was satisfying to see the two of them with nowhere to vent their anger. The three of them left the secret guardian's hall and rode to the minister's residence. It was the residence of Minister Li of the Ministry of Works. The secret guardians surrounded the residence, forbidding anyone from approaching. After the three of them entered, Chu Li quickly checked the 35 corpses and the environment of the residence. Half a day later, he brought them to an inn in the city. The people he brought were the people from Mei Air Courtyard and the disciples from Mei E Courtyard. Since Chen Donghai's martial arts had been crippled, he would only be a burden if he went. Gu Yu followed them and watched as they solemnly captured a skinny young man. He really couldn't see how this skinny young man could be the murderer. He looked so weak that he couldn't even stand up to a gust of wind. He was simply an ordinary person who didn't know martial arts. According to the injuries they had detected, the murderer should have been a tall and burly man who was far different from the skinny young man in front of them. Could it be that Chu Li simply captured someone to be the scapegoat for the mission? Chu Li did not say much. He only ordered his men to capture the skinny young man and bring him back to the secret guardian's hall for interrogation as soon as possible. The two of them returned to the main hall of the secret guardian's hall. Chen Donghai was waiting there anxiously. Chu Li went straight into the main hall and sat on the armchair to rest. He was lazy and did not want to talk. He did not want to brush these two off. Since this case was going to be solved, of course, he had to clean it up. He did not want to leave a mess and give people an excuse to attack him. Is he really the murderer? Gu Yu frowned. You didn't come up with this to fool people to deal with the Emperor's mission, did you? That guy doesn't know martial arts and his height doesn't match. Chu Li shook his head. Commander, do you know of a martial art called the bone shrinking skill? Bone shrinking skill? Gu Yu frowned. Chen Donghai quickly said, could it be that the murderer used the bone shrinking skill? Did you catch the murderer? Yes, Chu Li said. Commander Gu suspects that it's not the real murderer. That guy is using the bone shrinking skill now. It looks like he doesn't know martial arts because he used a secret skill. That's why he's so weak and easy to catch. If it were any other time, he would have escaped. Secret skill? Gu Yu frowned. He still needs a secret skill? This guy was a fierce and overbearing top-notch master. He did not need a secret skill to kill Minister Li's family easily. He looks powerful because he used a secret skill. Chu Li said faintly, actually, he's not that powerful. That's why it's so easy to catch him. You guys can investigate the rest and close this case as soon as possible. Gu Yu slowly nodded. A moment later, a skinny middle-aged man walked in quickly and handed Gu Yu a white paper before he left. Gu Yu opened the paper and his face darkened after he read it. Commander, is there no result from the interrogation? Chen Donghai asked. It's good that there's no result. Gu Yu scoffed. This guy is a little troublesome. Chu Li smiled faintly. What's the trouble? Gu Yu sighed and passed it to Chen Donghai. Chen Donghai quickly read it and frowned. He's a monk disciple of the Tempest Temple? Troublesome. Chapter 11:17. P.S. Sorry for the delay. I've been writing for a few days straight. I can't take it anymore. I'll take it easy today and resume tomorrow. Chu Li frowned. A monk disciple of the Tempest Temple, he shook his head. I don't think so. This is obviously a confession, Chen Donghai said impatiently. He gripped the paper as if he was holding a hot potato. The Tempest Temple and the Secret Guardians Hall were sworn enemies. They fought each other every year and fought in secret. Even if there were no deaths, there were many who were severely injured or had their martial arts crippled. The Tempest Temple was not as humble as they looked and did not have the magnanimity of a monk. The Secret Guardians Hall would have the guts to fight against other sects, but it was a headache for the Tempest Temple. Commander Gu was very wary of the Tempest Temple because he had not been able to gain any advantage from them ever since he took office. The Tempest Temple had steadily suppressed them, and the Secret Guardians Hall had turned into a defensive stance. Now they did not dare to provoke the Tempest Temple. Chu Li glanced at him and looked at Gu Yu. The confession might not be true. We need to ask carefully and patiently. If this person has ulterior motives, the first confession must be false. You think he has ulterior motives? Gu Yu frowned and looked up at him. It's not a vendetta? Chu Li said, it doesn't seem like a vendetta. If it was a vendetta, they wouldn't have died so easily. Although it's satisfying to kill all 35 of them, it's too quick for a vengeful person. What's his identity then? Gu Yu frowned. Chu Li shook his head. We'll need the Secret Guardians Hall's interrogation experts to get to the bottom of this. He might be an enemy of the Tempest Temple. Chen Donghai nodded. That makes sense. Gu Yu sized Chu Li up and said, Chu Li, as far as I know, you're best friends with Fa Yuan from the Tempest Temple. You won't protect the Tempest Temple because of this, will you? Chu Li could not help but laugh. All right then, I won't say anything else. I don't want people to suspect that I'm siding with the Tempest Temple. However, I'm guessing that this person is indeed a disciple of the Tempest Temple. Since he's a disciple of the Tempest Temple, what else is there to say? Gu Yu scoffed. Chen Donghai said, Chu Li, you're saying that he's a traitor of the Tempest Temple? Yes, that's about right. Chu Li nodded. Gu Yu frowned and remained silent. Chen Donghai hurriedly asked, even the Tempest Temple has a traitor? It was not as if the Secret Guardians Hall had never tried to instigate the disciples of the Tempest Temple, but none of them had succeeded. Chu Li smiled. Which faction doesn't have traitors? Let's see if we can find the opponent's weakness. As long as we can find the weakness, we can betray them. You make it sound nice. Chen Donghai shook his head. We haven't been able to instigate the Tempest Temple to defect. The Secret Guardians Hall is too weak. They can't defeat the Tempest Temple, so how can we allow the disciples of the Tempest Temple to rebel? They'll definitely die if they rebel. If it's a stronger sect, it won't be difficult to incite them to rebel, Chu Li said. All right then, get someone to examine it more carefully, Gu Yu said slowly. Chen Donghai said, I'll inform them. Chu Li picked up his teacup and took a sip. He then put the teacup down and fist saluted. Since the case has been solved, it's time for me to retire. Farewell. Wait, Gu Yu said in a low voice. Chu Li frowned at him. Gu Yu said, the case isn't really solved yet. Didn't you say that there's a mastermind? That's the secret guardian's hall's problem. Chu Li said plainly, can't you do that? Chen Donghai rushed in and said, Commander, that guy is dead. Gu Yu's face darkened. Dead? How did he die? He couldn't endure the torture, Chen Donghai said. B****. Gu Yu slammed his teacup on the table and yelled, how could they kill him? What were they doing? Chu Li coughed softly and asked, Centurion Chen, how many people were in charge of the interrogation? 3. Chen Donghai said, they're the interrogation experts in the house. Chu Li frowned and pondered. Gu Yu scoffed. Why? Do you think they're suspicious? Chu Li looked at him. Are they not? Let's go and take a look. Gu Yu scoffed. The three of them exited the hall and walked to the back, arriving at a spacious underground stone chamber. As soon as they entered the stone chamber, they were greeted with an eerie aura. There were all sorts of torture instruments with blood stains all around. The stench of blood assaulted their nostrils, sending chills and fear down their spines. A stone pillar was erected in the stone chamber and a person was tied to it. He was no longer breathing. The other three middle-aged men stared at the person with gloomy expressions. When they saw Chu Li and the others coming down, the three of them fist saluted. What happened? You're not new to this. How could you make such a mistake? Gu Yu was furious as soon as he arrived. He said in a low voice, don't you know that a confession is useless if the person is dead? If the person was dead, the confession would be useless. The dead could not speak, so they could fabricate any kind of confession. Therefore, no one would believe it, not even the emperor. The three of them smiled bitterly. Commander, we don't know what happened to him. Why did he suddenly stop breathing? Did he commit suicide? Chen Donghai asked. Chu Li said, I've crippled his martial arts. It's impossible for him to commit suicide. Then what happened? Chen Donghai looked at the corpse in confusion. Chu Li's gaze wandered over the three middle-aged secret guardians. The three of them looked at him calmly. Gu Yu and Chen Donghai were puzzled when they saw Chu Li's gaze. Chu Li smiled. Seems like it's a coincidence. Gu Yu and Chen Donghai frowned. The three of them looked calm and did not feel guilty at all. One of the middle-aged secret guardians said, Centurion Chu, are you suspecting us? Chu Li said, I didn't expect the secret guardians' hall to be infiltrated. What do you mean, Centurion Chu? Chen Donghai quickly said, are the three of them really suspicious? Don't joke around. The three middle-aged secret guardians had entered the secret guardians' hall when they were young, so their backgrounds were definitely clean. Chu Li said, are they disciples of the Holy Church of Light? The three of them frowned and stared at him. Chen Donghai's expression changed. He took a step back and said, disciples of the Holy Church of Light? He had a deep understanding of how terrifying the disciples of the Holy Church of Light were. They were a group of lunatics who did not care about their own lives and would easily perish together with their enemies. Chu Li looked at the square-faced, middle-aged man among the three and smiled. You've really hidden yourself well. I've been in the secret guardians' hall for so long, but I didn't notice. You're really amazing. I'm impressed. The square-faced, middle-aged man frowned. Centurion Chu, please don't joke around. I've never offended you. Chu Li said, the dead ones are disciples of the Holy Church of Light, right? Why did the Holy Church of Light kill the minister's entire family and frame the Tempest Temple? What's your motive? Forget it, you might not know. The square-faced, middle-aged man shook his head. Centurion Chu, why are you accusing me? Chu Li said, I have no grudge against you, why would I accuse you? However, the Holy Church of Light massacred the entire family of the imperial court's officials, not even sparing a 3-year-old child. How disappointing! The square-faced man quickly said, how strange, How did I become a disciple of the Holy Church of Light? Chu Li turned and glanced at Guyu. Investigate this person. I don't need to do the rest, right? Is he really a disciple of the Holy Church of Light? Guyu asked. Chu Li smiled. Believe it or not, it's up to you. Goodbye. Chapter 11-18. P.S. Update complete. There are only 2 updates today, more will be written tomorrow. Chu Li left immediately, but the 5 people in the stone room tensed up. Chen Donghai looked at the square-faced, middle-aged man and frowned. You're Yu Jinxing, right? Yes, Centurion Chen. The square-faced, middle-aged man gave a fist salute. Chen Donghai pondered. You're from Ju-1 Courtyard, right? Yes. Yu Jinxing nodded. Chen Donghai said, I remember you entered the Secret Guardians Hall a long time ago. Why are you dissatisfied with the Secret Guardians Hall? Centurion Chen believes Centurion Chu's words and thinks that I'm a disciple of the Holy Church of Light? Yes. Chen Donghai nodded. Although he has a grudge against me, he wouldn't lie about this. You should be a disciple of the Holy Church of Light, but I'm curious how you managed to hide it until now. Were you a disciple from the beginning, or did you join the Holy Church of Light later? Guyu frowned at Chen Donghai. Centurion Chen, this matter isn't confirmed yet, right? Commander, I believe Chu Li. Centurion Chen, you'd rather believe an outsider who has a grudge against the Secret Guardians Hall than your own people? Yu Jinxing quickly asked. Yes. Chen Donghai nodded. I trust Chu Li more than you. Then I have nothing to say. Yu Jinxing sighed. I can't prove my innocence. Chen Donghai said, Then you're a disciple of the Holy Church of Light. Centurion Chen. Guyu frowned. Don't be so sure. Yu Jinxing, you're not allowed to leave the stone room. The house will naturally give you an explanation. If you're really innocent, I'll personally seek justice for you from Chu Li. Yes, Commander. Yu Jinxing gave a fist salute. Thank you, Commander. Guyu waved his hand and walked out of the stone room with Chen Donghai. Do you really believe Chu Li? Guyu frowned. Both of them went to the main hall and ordered the stone room to be surrounded, trapping Yu Jinxing inside. Chen Donghai said, Commander, Chu Li is an arrogant person. He won't lie like this. It seems that the Holy Church of Light has infiltrated the Secret Guardians Hall. We need to investigate. We can't. Guyu shook his head. Our morale will fall if we investigate. What if something like this happens again? Chen Donghai frowned and said, Moreover, I think the reason why they wanted to kill Minister Li's family is very important and we should find out. How can we investigate if he's dead? Guyu said, Let's investigate the aftershocks first. 2 days later, in the evening, the setting sun dyed the garden red. Chu Li sat in the gazebo. Opposite of the stone table was Fa Yuan. Fa Yuan was dressed in a gray monk's robe. His head was bald and his body was tall and straight. His eyes were bright and full of expression. He placed his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. Brother Chu, why did you summon me here? Chu Li sent someone to the Mercy Temple to inform them that he wanted to meet Fa Yuan. Fa Yuan quickly received the news and rushed over. Minister Li's family extermination case. Fa Yuan, you know about it, right? Chu Li asked, why was his family exterminated? Our temple is investigating this matter. Fa Yuan revealed a solemn expression and said slowly, that disciple did not seem to have any enmity with Minister Li. As for why he killed Minister Li's entire family, we still haven't figured it out, but it can't be without reason. He was instigated by the Holy Church of Light. Chu Li shook his head and said, he probably has relatives who are being held hostage by the Holy Church of Light. Yes, this has been investigated, Fa Yuan said in a low voice. His daughter was kidnapped by the Holy Church of Light. Chu Li frowned. He didn't ask you for help? No. Fa Yuan shook his head. Maybe he felt that there was no way to save her. After all, she had been kidnapped to the Li dynasty, and it was true that he couldn't save her. The Holy Church of Light does not have the magnanimity of a major sect. It's disappointing. Chu Li's face darkened and he slowly nodded. When he captured that person, he did not look into his thoughts. He only knew that he was originally a disciple of the Tempest Temple and later joined the Holy Church of Light. As for why he betrayed the Tempest Temple, he did not investigate further. No matter the reason, he deserved to die after killing so many people, especially women and children. Now, it seemed that this matter was not so simple. In Brother Chu's opinion, why did they kill Minister Li's family? Fa Yuan asked. Chu Li pondered. Such a cruel act, I'm afraid it's to punish traitors. Minister Li is probably a disciple of the Holy Church of Light. Just thinking about it gives me chills. Just how many disciples of the Holy Church of Light are there in the Ji dynasty? Fa Yuan said, the Holy Church of Light is currently in a fierce battle with the Qiu dynasty. How would they have the energy to deal with the Ji dynasty? Chu Li sighed. I'm afraid that Minister Li's betrayal has involved the Qiu dynasty. This matter will probably become a mystery. Everyone is dead, and there's still a disciple of the Holy Church of Light in the Secret Guardians Hall. I'm afraid they don't know much. Brother Chu, you're not a Secret Guardian now, but you still work for the Secret Guardians Hall? Fa Yuan asked. Chu Li shook his head. I went to help at the last minute, and the Tempest Temple was almost made a scapegoat. Fa Yuan sighed. My temple and the Secret Guardians Hall have been fighting in the dark for a long time. Now that King An is dead, Brother Chu, you can finally stay in the imperial residence without worry. Chu Li looked at him and smiled. Fa Yuan, what do you mean by that? Fa Yuan smiled and pressed his palms together. Brother Chu, you're the one who killed King An, right? What a joke! Chu Li could not help but laugh. You're really daring. If I killed King An, would the Emperor spare me? He suspected me too, and summoned me to the imperial house to interrogate me. Fa Yuan said, even if you didn't do it yourself, you must have ordered someone to do it, right? From what I know, Brother Chu, you're friends with Du Feng. Chu Li waved his hand. I've never met Du Feng, or else the winner would have been decided long ago. Fa Yuan shook his head and smiled. Brother Chu, why hide it from me? You're close to Snow Lunar Pavilion, and Du Feng is also friends with Snow Lunar Pavilion. How could Snow Lunar Pavilion not meet the two of you? It's just that no one saw it. Chu Li said impatiently, Fa Yuan, your words are getting more and more unreliable. You're just making wild guesses, and none of them are reliable. I've never met Du Feng, this is definitely not a lie. Even if you haven't met him, you've been friends for a long time. Moreover, with Snow Lunar Pavilion acting as a bridge, you'll be able to talk. Fa Yuan smiled. Then send a message to Du Feng through Snow Lunar Pavilion, and ask him to help kill King An. Chu Li sighed. Do you think Du Feng will agree? To go against an enlightened master, isn't that suicide? Didn't Du Feng escape? Fa Yuan smiled. That means he can go against an enlightened master. Why are you saying this? Chu Li smiled. This is not a small matter. If it's proven that it's me, my life will be in danger. Don't tell me that the Tempest Temple hates me and wants to spread this rumor? I didn't spread it, Fa Yuan said. Actually, it's not difficult to find out. You just have to ask Snow Lunar Pavilion. Chu Li's face darkened. Fa Yuan, you want to go against Snow Lunar Pavilion? I'm just curious and want to find out Du Feng's whereabouts. Fa Yuan smiled. Among all the factions, Snow Lunar Pavilion is the closest to Du Feng. I just don't know why the Emperor hasn't made a move against Snow Lunar Pavilion. Chapter 11-19. Fa Yuan shook his head. Brother Chu, I don't think you can hide your relationship with Du Feng from the Emperor. If we can see it, how can he not? What is the Tempest Temple trying to do? Chu Li frowned. Fa Yuan smiled. Although we feel sorry for King An's death, we have no intention of avenging him. Death is death. However, our temple is very interested in this Du Feng. We want to know more about him. This person is too mysterious. Chu Li said, he is no longer in the Ji dynasty, or we would have found him long ago. Looks like Brother Chu is really related to Du Feng. Fa Yuan smiled. Chu Li said impatiently, that is obvious. If I were him, I would escape the Ji dynasty too. No matter how powerful the emperor is, he can't reach the Li dynasty, Qiu dynasty, Fu dynasty, and Jing dynasty. But the emperor can destroy Snow Lunar Pavilion. Fa Yuan said, if that's the case, Du Feng will definitely come back for revenge. Du Feng has a close relationship with Snow Lunar Pavilion. This is something everyone knows. Chu Li frowned. Fa Yuan said, but the strange thing is, the emperor hasn't touched Snow Lunar Pavilion. But that doesn't mean the other sects won't take action and show goodwill to the imperial family. Chu Li shook his head slowly. If Snow Lunar Pavilion was in trouble, Li Hanyan would have sent a message. However, this was indeed dangerous and getting more dangerous. Du Feng's relationship with Snow Lunar Pavilion was well known. Snow Lunar Pavilion would be a major suspect if the emperor was after Du Feng. There were no fools in this world. Everyone was smart. Seeing that Snow Lunar Pavilion was safe and the imperial court did not make a move, they just watched quietly. However, as time passed, there would inevitably be opportunists who would test the waters and go against Snow Lunar Pavilion. Although he had set up a formation outside Snow Lunar Pavilion to prevent them from coming out, accidents were inevitable. It would not let his wishful thinking succeed. Forget it. I know Du Feng's background. He is a disciple of the heavenly demonic sect. He is the sworn enemy of the Tempest Temple, Chu Li said. The heavenly demonic sect? Fa Yuan was shocked. Chu Li said, so he must have escaped to the Fu dynasty. That's impossible. Fa Yuan pondered. The disciples of the heavenly demonic sect are good at disguising themselves, but their martial arts skills are ordinary. Du Feng's knife technique is top-notch, and his cultivation level is top-notch. This doesn't match the characteristics of the disciples of the heavenly demonic sect. Chu Li smiled and said, he's a genius in martial arts. He can learn any martial art in one go. Moreover, he can change his appearance, so it's very easy for him to secretly learn martial arts. That's true. Fa Yuan sighed. The martial arts of the heavenly demonic sect are strange and mysterious. What's even more fatal is that after cultivating the heavenly demonic power, it will affect one's temperament and make one evil and cruel. In the end, it will become a great disaster. Chu Li asked, can you deal with heavenly demonic sect then? Fa Yuan was not one to speak without thinking, but there was nothing wrong with the fact that he had cultivated the heavenly demonic power. It was just that when he was pretending to be Zhao Dave, he would inevitably feel that he was unable to act out his role. He was already on his guard, but other than that, there was nothing unusual. Could it be caused by his Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture? Fa Yuan said, they are in the Fu dynasty, they are powerless. If you really hate him, why don't you go over? The Fu dynasty is the world of Taoism. It'll be very troublesome for Buddhist disciples to enter. Fa Yuan shook his head. Chu Li smiled and said, I see that there are very few Buddhist disciples in the Fu dynasty, and they are all scattered around. Is it because they were defeated by Taoism? Fa Yuan smiled bitterly. Chu Li was surprised. Is that true? Fa Yuan sighed and said, back then, there was a war between Buddhism and Taoism in the Fu dynasty. In the end, Taoism won and the Buddhism was chased out of the Fu dynasty. They could only set up temples in the 4 directions and could not step into the Fu dynasty's territory. Even now, you can't go in? Everyone has the right to punish them. Interesting. Chu Li shook his head and laughed. As the two were talking, Suru hurried over. She was dressed in an apricot gown and her beautiful face was solemn. She approached Chu Li and said, Chief, I have confidential news. As she spoke, she glanced at Fa Yuan. Chu Li said, Say it, Fa Yuan is not a person who speaks without thinking. Senior Sister Su from Snow Lunar Pavilion is dead, Su Ru said. Chu Li was stunned and his face darkened. Don't you have spirit pills with you? The important disciples of Snow Lunar Pavilion all had the spirit blessing pill. Even if they died, it would not matter. As long as they consumed the spirit blessing pill in time, they would be able to come back to life. A master like Shu Qingdai should not have been killed. Shu Qingye's beautiful face appeared in his mind. He thought about her sudden death and that they would be separated from each other forever. It was really hard to accept. Su Ru said coldly, She died with her head hanging high. Spirit pills are useless. Chu Li asked, Who did it? I don't know. Su Ru sighed and said, She was ambushed. Chu Li said in a low voice, Didn't you forbid them from leaving the valley? They can't stay here forever. There are some things that require them to leave the valley, Su Ru said. Chu Li said slowly, I'll go over immediately. He turned to look at Fa Yuan and sized him up. Fa Yuan quickly waved his hand and said, Brother Chu, you won't suspect us, right? Our temple did not do anything. Not you. Chu Li said coldly, There are not many masters who can kill Miss Shu. Shu Qingdai was also a grandmaster now. That was why she dared to come out. His anger surged up like a fountain and kept rushing to the top of his head. He could not suppress it no matter what. Fa Yuan said, It can't be our temple. I'll go back to the temple and help investigate. Chu Li's face was stiff as he gave a fist salute. Fa Yuan tactfully said goodbye and left. He glided over the top of the wall and disappeared without a trace. Chu Li and Su Ru arrived at Tianshu Courtyard. Xiao Shi and Xiao Qi were there. There was also Shining who he had not seen for a long time. The atmosphere in Tianshu Courtyard was heavy. The ladies did not speak. Seeing him enter, Xiao Shi said, Chu Li, what should we do? Chu Li said, I'll find the murderer and avenge Miss Shu. Shining was dressed in a green tunic. She sat quietly by the stone table. Her expression was solemn. Her eyebrows were shrouded in melancholy, but her figure was still enchanting and graceful. Chu Li gave a fist salute and said, Senior, please stay here and help me protect the second lady. Both of us will go back. Shao Qi and Shao Ru, don't go back. We don't want our identities to be exposed. Shining sighed and said, That girl Qingdai is really unlucky. She failed miserably in such an easy task. Shu Qingdai was an outstanding talent among the second-generation disciples. She was already a grandmaster at a young age. She had a bright future ahead of her. She would become the pavilion leader of Snow Lunar Pavilion in the future. No one would have thought that she would die so early. Xiao Qi said, Chu Li, let us know if there's any news. Chu Li nodded. He reached out and grabbed Shining-Hu's wrist through her tunic. They disappeared in a flash. The two of them appeared in Shining-Hu's waterside pavilion. Shining-Hu opened the door and walked out of the upper corridor. Chu Li followed closely behind. His omniscient mirror had already been activated. Soon, he found Shu Qingdie's corpse. Her beautiful face was pale and lifeless. Even with her eyes closed, he could still see the disbelief on her face. Seeing the circle of stitches on her snow-white neck, Chu Li's killing intent boiled, and he could not control it. Shining-Hu was walking in front. She felt the murderous intent and turned her head to look at him. Chu Li understood what she meant. He nodded and said, I will calm down. As the saying goes, anger should not be used. Anger would only ruin things. It would affect one's mind and judgment, making it easier for one to be deceived. He would not underestimate anyone. This murderer must be caught, but he could not be impatient. He did not want to fall into a trap instead. Maybe this was a trap in itself. He had to be careful. These thoughts turned in his mind but were quickly extinguished. He forced himself to calm down. Senior Shen, you go and see the pavilion leader and the others. I will go and see Miss Shu, Chu Li said. Chapter 11:20. P.S. Update complete. I'm really sorry. Chu Li nodded slowly and glided up to a loft on the stone wall. He saw the coffin in the middle of the first floor. The temperature in the loft was very low and there were huge ice blocks all around. Shu Qingdai lay quietly in the coffin, as if she had fallen asleep. Chu Li looked at her face. He felt guilty and regretful, heavy and angry. After a long time, he collected his thoughts and took a deep breath to cheer himself up. The only thing he could do was to take revenge and kill her murderer. He used the omniscient mirror to see through Shu Qingdai's body. He wanted to know what kind of martial arts was used to kill her and find the murderer to avenge her. Unfortunately, other than the knife marks on her body, there were no other external injuries. She did not even have any internal injuries. It was obvious that she was killed in one strike. Chu Li frowned and pondered. It was obvious that the opponent's martial arts was far better than hers, or she was caught off guard. She did not expect the opponent to kill her, or someone close to her. Footsteps were heard. Chu Li did not turn his head, but the omniscient mirror had already seen the person approaching. Li Hanyan was dressed in a light green gown. She had a slender figure and a face as white as jade. She stepped into the loft and stood behind Chu Li. "Brother Chu." Chu Li turned to look at her and nodded. Li Hanyan wrung her slender hands and lowered her head. "Brother Chu, it's my fault. I couldn't protect Sister Su." Chu Li turned to look at her. Li Hanyan said, "I wanted to go with her, but Sister Su said that the two of us would attract too much attention. So, she left the valley by herself. I couldn't insist on going with her." In the end, Chu Li said, "What does she want?" "To send a letter." Li Hanyan said, "It's a letter written by the pavilion leader herself." "To whom?" Chu Li asked. Li Hanyan shook her head. "Only Sister Su knows." Chu Li nodded. "Where did you find Miss Su?" "In a forest 20 miles away." Li Hanyan said. "Who found her?" Chu Li frowned. Li Hanyan said, "It was me." Chu Li stared at her. Li Hanyan lowered her head in embarrassment. "I wanted to go out and take a look." She knew that the disciples of the Snow Lunar Pavilion were holed up because Du Feng had killed King An. The Emperor had issued an order to hunt down and kill Du Feng. Since the Snow Lunar Pavilion and Du Feng were involved, they would become public enemies, so it was best for them not to go out. However, deep in her bones, she had an urge to pursue excitement and adventure. She sneaked out without telling her seniors, but she did not expect to find Shu Qingdai's corpse by accident. Chu Li said, "Bring me there to have a look." "Yes." Li Hanyan quickly nodded. The two of them exited the valley of the Snow Lunar Pavilion and entered a forest. It was already early winter, but the forest was still lush and green. Chu Li furrowed his brows and scanned his surroundings. He noticed that there were more than 20 martial arts masters hiding in the dark. They were all staring at the ravine from afar. Although they could not enter due to the protection of the formation, they did not give up. Every one of them was filled with murderous intent and wanted to ambush the disciples of the Snow Lunar Pavilion. Chu Li's face was gloomy. He glided onto the treetop. His eyes were like lightning. He shouted in a deep voice, "Anyone who enters within 100 feet of the Snow Lunar Pavilion will be killed without mercy." He had been suppressing his raging anger. He wanted to find someone to teach him a lesson. Now that he saw more than 20 martial arts masters secretly staring at the Snow Lunar Pavilion, he was even more furious. He had a strong urge to cripple these people. "Hey!" A few cold snorts came from the forest. Chu Li swept his gaze over and said coldly, "You can try." "Then let's try." A young man glided out and appeared in front of Chu Li. "Who are you?" Chu Li said coldly, "Chu Li. Du Feng of the south and Chu Li of the north." "Ha, I've heard of your name for a long time." The young man sneered disapprovingly. "But what do you have to do with the Snow Lunar Pavilion? Why are you working so hard for them?" Why did you come to the Snow Lunar Pavilion? Chu Li scoffed. Is it to find out Du Feng's whereabouts? There's no need to go to the Snow Lunar Pavilion. Du Feng has already escaped from the Ji dynasty and fled to the Fu dynasty. Even if you flip the Snow Lunar Pavilion upside down, you won't be able to find Du Feng. Really? The young man was stunned. Chu Li said, You have one more step and you'll be within 100 feet. Chu Li, although you're famous, we're not to be trifled with. I'm going to step on you. As he said that, he glided 3 steps forward. He had already stepped into the 100 feet dividing line and looked at Chu Li proudly. Chu Li swung his arm. Suddenly, a chi sound was heard. The flying blade hit the young man. The young man flew out and crashed into a pine tree. He was motionless. The flying blade pinned him to the tree like a nail. He immediately fainted. Chu Li glanced at the rest of the people who were hiding and sneered. If you're not convinced, come out. I want to see who dares to behave atrociously in the Snow Lunar Pavilion. His move shocked everyone. The young man who came out earlier was a genius. He was already a grandmaster at such a young age. His cultivation level was profound and not weaker than the rest of them. Yet, he could not even withstand one move from Chu Li. They were shocked and thought that they would only be humiliating themselves if they came out. Chu Li scoffed coldly and glided forward with Li Hanyan. Li Hanyan praised, This is how we should deal with them. These people are too despicable. They're like hungry wolves that can pounce on us at any time. Yet, we can't do anything to them. We have to be on guard. Chu Li said, Next time, we'll just kill them directly. They hide far away. They run away as soon as I chase after them. Li Hanyan said helplessly, Those who come here are all top-notch in light body technique. Once they start running, I can't catch up to them. How annoying. Chu Li frowned and nodded. The two of them finally arrived at an empty spot in the forest. Chu Li saw the bloodstains on the withered grass and a few trees that were also stained with blood. He could tell that Shu Qingdai had died a horrible death. Fresh blood gushed out, and it made him even angrier. His killing intent soared. Under the observation of the omniscient mirror, everything on the ground was clearly visible. Li Hanyan stood at the side and looked at him in confusion. Chu Li scanned the surroundings and shook his head in disappointment. He could not find any trace of the murderer. It was as if this person had never appeared. Moreover, he did it cleanly and left no traces. Li Hanyan asked softly, Big Brother Chu, can you find the murderer? Chu Li shook his head. He should be lying in ambush here and killed Miss Shu with a single slash. So, where should he be hiding? He looked around and finally stopped on a hollow tree. He glided into the hollow tree and scanned every inch of the tree with his electric gaze. Finally, he found a strand of hair and suddenly, a cold smile appeared on his face. With this strand of hair, he would be able to find the owner of the hair. Then, he would know whether Shu Qingdai was killed or not. Let's go. Chu Li waved his hand. Li Hanyan walked over in confusion. Chu Li grabbed her wrist and disappeared in a flash. The next moment, he appeared in a forest. A middle-aged man was sitting cross-legged opposite of him. He was eating his rations. When he saw the two of them, he immediately grabbed his long knife. Who are you? Chu Li asked in a deep voice. He squinted his eyes and a sharp glint flashed in his eyes. He noticed the force of the heavenly demonic energy. The middle-aged man in front of him was a disciple of the heavenly demonic sect. Did you kill Shu Qingdai? Chu Li continued to ask. Who is Shu Qingdai? The middle-aged man frowned and was on guard. Chu Li said coldly, Why did you kill Shu Qingdai? Chapter 11:21. P.S. Everyone is reacting even later because they need to adjust their state and relax for the next 2 days. They will update earlier tomorrow. The update time is set at 12 a.m. to 6 p.m. Chu Li narrowed his eyes and sneered. Did you disguise as me to kill them? Who are you? the middle-aged man asked coldly. Chu Li answered, Chu Li. The middle-aged man sneered, I don't know you, how can I disguise as you? Then who did you disguise as? Chu Li scoffed. The middle-aged man said, All right, there's no harm in telling you. I disguised as Du Feng. Why? Chu Li asked coldly. Snow Lunar Pavilion and Heavenly Demonic Sect have nothing to do with each other, right? Even if Du Feng was a disciple of Heavenly Demonic Sect, Snow Lunar Pavilion only did Du Feng a favor. Why would Heavenly Demonic Sect want to kill a disciple of Snow Lunar Pavilion? The middle-aged man frowned at Chu Li. Li Hanyan felt that her brain was not enough. She heard it clearly but could not understand it. Her mind was a mess. Chu Li said, I know Du Feng's identity. He was a disciple of Heavenly Demonic Sect. He killed King An and escaped back to Heavenly Demonic Sect. Snow Lunar Pavilion did not harm Du Feng. Why would Heavenly Demonic Sect want to deal with Snow Lunar Pavilion? The middle-aged man remained silent. Chu Li frowned. Is Heavenly Demonic Sect going to repay kindness with enmity? There's no other way. The middle-aged man said, I was ordered to do so. Whose order? Chu Li sneered. Who has a grudge against Du Feng? The sect leader personally gave the order. The middle-aged man said helplessly, There's no harm in telling you. It's not just me. Everyone in Heavenly Demonic Sect received the order to destroy Snow Lunar Pavilion. Chu Li was puzzled. Why? To help Du Feng. The middle-aged man said, Du Feng needs to train his state of mind. If he knew that Snow Lunar Pavilion was destroyed, his heavenly demonic power will improve under the strong stimulation. Chu Li was startled, then he was furious. You killed a disciple of Snow Lunar Pavilion for Du Feng's martial arts? Yes, we were ordered to destroy Snow Lunar Pavilion. The middle-aged man said calmly, I originally disguised myself as Du Feng and wanted to sneak into the Snow Lunar Pavilion. I didn't expect that woman to recognize me, so I had no choice but to kill her. He felt that since Chu Li knew about it, he would definitely not let him go. He was definitely going to die, so he might as well just tell him everything so that he wouldn't have to suffer any more torture. Furthermore, if Chu Li knew about it, he would definitely seek revenge. He would definitely die in the hands of the sect leader, which would be considered as avenging him. Good. Good. Chu Li was so angry that he laughed. You want to destroy the entire Snow Lunar Pavilion? Huh. His body suddenly exuded a dense, murderous aura. Li Hanyan felt a chill run down her spine, as if she had fallen into an icehouse. The middle-aged man felt the same way. He knew that Chu Li was filled with killing intent and was about to make a move. He stared into Chu Li's eyes and said in a low voice, Chu Li, since you know about Heavenly Demonic Sect, you should know that once you become Heavenly Demonic Sect's enemy, we'll fight to the death and destroy you. What a fight to the death! Chu Li sneered. A dim sword light floated up from his waist. The modesty sword slashed across the middle-aged man's neck and returned to its sheath. Chu Li slammed his palm on top of the middle-aged man's chest and activated the Heavenly Demonic Spirit Devouring technique. Bang! The middle-aged man fell on his back. His head was separated from his body, but not a single drop of blood came out. Li Hanyan said hatefully, he got off lightly. Chu Li took a deep breath and said, Go back first and tell the pavilion leader about this. Big Brother Chu, which sect is Heavenly Demonic Sect? Li Hanyan held his large hand and asked in confusion, I don't think I've heard of this sect. It's a sect from the Fu dynasty. Chu Li frowned and said, Heavenly Demonic Sect can change your appearance. You must be careful and keep your eyes open. Don't be deceived by the people around you. I'm a grandmaster. I won't be assassinated so easily. Li Hanyan laughed. Chu Li scoffed. Miss Su, aren't you a grandmaster? Didn't you get killed all the same? When he thought of this, the murderous intent in his heart surged again. Although the murderer had been killed, the real murderer who ordered the murder was still at large. It was Fu Qingya. He had cultivated his heavenly demonic power to the 9th level, which was similar to Fu Qingya's, but he might not be able to defeat Fu Qingya. Judging from the range of the heavenly demonic field, he was still inferior. However, he must take revenge. Heavenly Demonic Sect was stronger than Snow Lunar Pavilion, and the heavenly demonic power was hard to defend against. Snow Lunar Pavilion would not be able to defend against it. Sigh. Senior Sister Su died such an unjust death. Li Hanyan sighed. Chu Li said, "You go back first. I'll avenge Miss Su." "You're going to the Fu dynasty to look for heavenly demonic sect?" Li Hanyan frowned. Chu Li nodded slowly. "I have to avenge her." Li Hanyan asked, "Big Brother Chu, are you going to disguise yourself as Du Feng?" "I'll go with my original appearance." Chu Li scoffed. He did not hide his original identity. Snow Lunar Pavilion was under great pressure now. Not only heavenly demonic sect, but other sects were also eyeing them covetously and could pounce on them at any time. By revealing his identity, he was clearly protecting Snow Lunar Pavilion so that the people of the martial arts world would have some reservations. "I'll go with you," Li Hanyan said hurriedly. "I heard that the martial arts world of the Fu dynasty is far more powerful than the Ji dynasty. They have many masters, 10 or even 100 times more than us. I wonder if it's true." Chu Li said, "The Fu dynasty has always been 10 times bigger than the Ji dynasty. It's only natural that they have more masters." "Big Brother Chu, do you think I'm a burden?" Li Hanyan asked. Chu Li said calmly, "The Fu dynasty is not the Ji dynasty. Heavenly demonic sect is powerful and I might not be able to be distracted. It's better if you don't go." "Yes." Li Hanyan was reluctant, but there was nothing she could do. She could only blame her martial arts for being too weak. Chu Li understood her thoughts and patted her shoulder. "Don't rush to cultivate. It'll be dangerous if you're too greedy." Li Hanyan was a genius in martial arts. Although her progress was not as fast as Chu Li's, with the help of the concentration talisman, her cultivation progressed by leaps and bounds. "Yes," Li Hanyan said weakly. Chu Li suddenly disappeared. Li Hanyan sighed and walked back unhappily. She stopped after a few steps and picked up the middle-aged man's corpse. With the head in one hand and the body in the other, she glided away and soon entered the dense forest. Suddenly, she stopped and turned to look at her surroundings. She scoffed. Sneaky and cowardly bandits. The people hiding in the dark were furious. Chu Li had put them in their place. They were already filled with rage because they were not as skilled as Li Hanyan. They had no choice but to bear with the situation. However, this little girl was so presumptuous that they could not tolerate it. Presumptuous. A middle-aged man with wretched features glided down from the treetop and landed not far from her. He said in a low voice, "Do you think we won't dare to kill you? Do you have the guts?" Li Hanyan gave him a sidelong glance. "Aren't you afraid that Big Brother Chu will punish you?" "Chu Li is strong, but we're not to be trifled with," the wretched man said proudly. "Tell me your name." Li Hanyan scoffed. "I'm Zhao Chuan from the Azure Mountain." The wretched man scoffed. He stared greedily at Li Hanyan and her bulging breasts. Li Hanyan's figure was slender and graceful but curvaceous. She had a slim chest and a slim waist. Her figure was scorching hot. The Azure Mountain. I've never heard of it. Li Hanyan pouted and said, "All right, what are you trying to do?" Zhao Chuan scoffed. "Tell me where Du Feng is hiding." "Didn't Big Brother Chu say that Du Feng has returned to the Fu dynasty's heavenly demonic sect? If you have the guts, go to the Fu dynasty's heavenly demonic sect to look for him." Li Hanyan scoffed. "Don't look for Snow Lunar Pavilion." Chapter 11:22. P.S. Update complete. Li Hanyan shook her head and said, "You're courting death. Dream on." She disappeared in a flash and appeared behind Zhao Chuan. The middle-aged man's corpse fell to the ground. Clang! Suddenly, the sky was filled with cold light. A dazzling sword gleam pressed towards Zhao Chuan like a huge snowball. Ding 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 ding. Zhao Chuan was not a weakling either. He drew his sword and blocked more than 10 strikes. He looked wretched, but his martial arts was top-notch, especially swordsmanship. Ugh! A muffled groan was heard. The sword gleam in the sky suddenly faded. Zhao Chuan clutched his throat and stared at Li Hanyan. Li Hanyan pulled the long sword out of his throat and shook it lightly. The blade was as bright as new. Then, she sheathed it. These two movements were elegant and calm. She stared at Zhao Chuan and shook her head. Your swordsmanship is far from it. The people hiding in the dark had a change of expression. Zhao Chuan's dark parasol divine sword was unique. Although he was not at the level of Du Feng of the south or Chu Li of the north, he was still a first-rate master. However, he was killed by this little girl within a few moves. Li Hanyan glided back to her original spot and bent down to pick up the middle-aged man's corpse. Wait! A shout was heard. A red-faced elder appeared and blocked Li Hanyan's path. I'd like to learn a thing or two from you. Li Hanyan frowned and straightened her back. She looked at him impatiently. Who are you to Zhao Chuan? I'm his master's uncle, the red-faced elder said in a deep voice. I'm Zhao Feng. Come on. Li Hanyan unsheathed her sword and pointed it at Zhao Feng. You people from Dark Parasol Mountain are quite bold. I'll pay you a visit after this. As soon as she finished speaking, she appeared in front of Zhao Feng in a flash. A ball of sword gleam enveloped Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng wanted to see through her moves first, so he used a defensive stance to defend himself. His defense was impenetrable. Buzz! It was as if a swarm of bees had flown past. The sword gleam disappeared and transformed into a sword that pierced the left side of Zhao Feng's chest. Li Hanyan slowly retracted her sword. With a shake of the blade, the shiny sword returned to its scabbard. Zhao Feng's eyes widened as he clutched his chest, his face full of unwillingness. What kind of sword technique is this? Li Hanyan took a step back to the middle-aged man's corpse and bent down to pick it up. With one hand holding the head and the other holding the body, she said casually, "The snow lunar sword. It's just an ordinary sword technique from my sect. Your Azure Mountain is too weak." She was satisfied. Since Big Brother Chu had established his dominance, she should also establish her dominance on behalf of the Snow Lunar Pavilion. She should strengthen their influence and let them understand their limits, know the immensity of heaven and earth, and quickly scram. Snow, moon, sword. Zhao Feng clutched his chest and fell to the ground weakly. Blood gushed out of his mouth as he said unwillingly, Good sword technique." Li Hanyan scoffed. "I'll pay a visit to the Azure Parasol Mountain." "Humph! How dare a little kitten or puppy come to our Snow Lunar Pavilion and cause trouble?" After saying that, she glanced at the people hiding in the forest. Her gaze was as sharp as a sword. Seeing that no one jumped out from the forest, she carried the corpse and floated away. Everyone in the forest felt a chill in their hearts as they were shocked by Li Hanyan's sword technique. Although they were afraid of Chu Li's previous abilities, they were not surprised. After all, the title of Chu Li of the North and Du Feng of the South was not for nothing. Naturally, he had amazing skills. However, a young girl from the Snow Lunar Pavilion was so powerful that it made them feel a chill in their hearts. What about the other disciples of the Snow Lunar Pavilion? Would they be more powerful than this young girl? Would those famous disciples be more powerful than her? They were no match for her. They would just be courting death. It was evening when Chu Li appeared in the Tianshu courtyard. Shao Qi and Shao Shi were waiting. When they saw him return, they looked at him with 4 clear eyes. "What happened?" Shao Qi asked. Chu Li sighed. "Heavenly demonic sect did it." "Heavenly demonic sect." Shao Qi frowned. How could it be them? She could not figure out how Heavenly demonic sect could be the culprit. She had always thought that it was the secret guardian's hall, a martial arts sect that secretly sided with the imperial court, or a martial arts sect that wanted to take advantage of the situation. She did not expect it to be heavenly demonic sect. After all, Chu Li had disguised himself as Zhou Ying as a disciple of heavenly demonic sect. Heavenly demonic sect thought that Du Feng was Zhou Ying in disguise. Heavenly demonic sect and Snow Lunar Pavilion had no enmity. It was to provoke Zhou Ying and benefit his heavenly demonic power, Chu Li said coldly. He felt guilty. No matter what, Shu Qingdia's death was unjust because of him. Furious killing intent surged in his chest, but it was forcefully suppressed by the omniscient mirror. However, it would occasionally surge up. Only by killing Fu Qingya from heavenly demonic sect could he vent his anger. Shao Qi said coldly, "Ridiculous." Xiao Shi asked, "What are you going to do, Chu Li?" "Miss Shu was implicated by me. I'll avenge her." Chu Li said, "I'll go to heavenly demonic sect right away." "Where's Chief Chu Li?" A voice suddenly rang out, echoing through the sky that was filled with the sunset glow. Chu Li frowned. A young man in a green robe stood outside the main entrance of King An's imperial residence. He was tall and handsome. His eyebrows were long enough to reach his temples, and his eyes were as bright as stars. He stood at the bottom of the stairs with his hands behind his back and a proud expression on his face. He said, "I'm Lu Guangdi from Tide Listening Pavilion. I'm here to learn from Chief Chu Li." "Tide Listening Pavilion?" Shao Qi said. "I didn't expect them to have a disciple." Chu Li scoffed. "Tide Listening Pavilion?" He searched for information about Tide Listening Pavilion in his mind. Shao Shi said, "Tide Listening Pavilion is a hidden sect. I can't believe they have a disciple in the martial arts world. They're so high profile too. They're trying to suppress you." "It's a shortcut to become famous by stepping on you," Shao Qi said. "Let me do it." Chu Li said, "Just say that I'm not around. I'll go to heavenly demonic sect. It might take 2 or 3 days." Heavenly demonic sect is not to be trifled with. "They're probably hiding powerful masters," Shao Qi said. Chu Li nodded and disappeared in a flash. "Could it be that Chief Chu Li doesn't dare to accept the challenge?" Lu Guangdi asked. His voice slowly spread across the sky like a slowly moving tide, but it did not stop. It echoed throughout half of Fairy's capital, demonstrating his profound inner energy cultivation. Shao Qi's voice was heard. "My husband isn't in the residence. If you want to challenge him, you'll have to wait a few days." Her voice was cold and gentle, like a bowl of iced sour plum soup under the scorching sun. It could suppress a person's anger. Her cold and gentle voice slowly spread across half of Fairy's capital. Her voice was even louder than Lu Guangdi's. Lu Guangdi smiled. "I've long heard that Chief Chu Li married a talented and beautiful woman with top-notch martial arts skills. It's my honor to meet you." "Please go back," Shao Qi said. Their voices resounded in the sky, and everyone could hear them clearly. Lu Guangdi said proudly, "I've traveled a long distance to come here. I'm not willing to go back like this. Since Chief Chu Li doesn't want to meet me, I'll meet Madame Chu. I'll have a taste of Madame Chu's skills." When everyone heard his voice, they knew what he was planning. If he beat up Madame Chu, would he have to worry about Chu Li not coming out? They were more than happy to watch the show. If they could defeat Chu Li, they would become famous. After all, Northern Chu Li's reputation was not small. "There's no need," Shao Qi said coldly. Chapter 11:23. Shao Qi's cold and gentle voice could be heard. "Forgive me for not being able to accompany you. If you want to learn from him, you can wait until my husband returns." That's not up to Madame Chu," he scoffed. He leaped onto the wall of the imperial residence, and was about to climb over. "How dare you!" Zheng Lide had already brought people to guard the main gate to prevent people from barging in. Seeing Lu Guangdi's fearlessness and disregard for the imperial residence, he was furious. He had 6 Grandmaster protectors with him, while Zhu Tianhua and the others guarded Tianshu Courtyard and Precious Light Courtyard in case someone tried to lure them away to harm the 3 princesses. One of the protectors said, "Commander, he's trespassing into our imperial residence. Should we take him down?" Zheng Lied scoffed. "Let's attack together. If we can't take him down, our imperial residence will lose face." "Heh, yes." Everyone responded and pounced on Lu Guangdi, who was in the air. Lu Guangdi flew over the wall of the imperial residence and glided through the air. When he saw the 6 protectors flying into the sky, he shook his head and gently pressed his palms down. The 6 protectors of the prince's mansion felt a huge force pressing down on them, stopping their ascension. The clear qi was exhausted and the turbid qi was rising, so they could only float down. Even if they attacked from a distance, they would not be a threat. They were shocked. This kid's palm energy was amazing, and it was just right when their clear and turbid auras were about to dissipate. They were powerless to stop him, so they could only land and watch as he floated over their heads. "Get down here!" Zheng Lied punched out fiercely. Bang! Lu Guangdi pushed out his palm again and collided with the fist energy. He used the momentum to float even faster, flying past Zheng Lied and the others and toward Tianshu Courtyard. Zheng Lied's face turned red as he scoffed angrily. After him. If Lu Guangdi really ran to Tianshu Courtyard, he would lose face as the commander. Even with 6 Grandmasters, they still could not stop Lu Guangdi. The other 6 protectors also felt frustrated. They hurriedly flew into the sky and chased after Lu Guangdi. Lu Guangdi looked back at them, shook his head, and smiled. He pushed out his palm again. The 7 people who were in pursuit felt an invisible force surging towards them like a wave trying to push them away. It was endless and abnormally strong. They couldn't help but shiver in fear. It seemed like this guy wasn't using tricks. The power of his palm was shockingly strong. They no longer held back as they unleashed all of their abilities, whether it was fists or palms, to counter Lu Guangdi's palm energy. It was as if Lu Guangdi had been sent flying by the crowd as he sped up again. Zheng Lied's face turned even redder as he gritted his teeth. The 7 of them had actually been toyed around with by Lu Guangdi. Not only did their punches fail to injure him, they even helped him. Lu Guangdi used the momentum to move forward. His speed was twice as fast as before. Before they could catch up to him, he had already arrived in the sky above the Tianshu Courtyard in the blink of an eye. "Halt!" With a shout, Zhu Tianhua's gigantic body rose into the air as he charged towards Lu Guangdi. However, Lu Guangdi abruptly turned around and did not meet Zhu Tianhua head-on. Instead, he fell straight down, coincidentally dodging Zhu Tianhua's attack, causing Zhu Tianhua to miss while Lu Guangdi landed on the ground calmly. "Step down." Shao Qi's cold voice rang out. "Yes, madam," Zhu Tianhua helplessly replied. Zheng Lied and the others chased after them in a fluster, but they were coldly glared at by Zhu Tianhua. Zheng Lied felt helpless and sullen as he scoffed, "This brat is too cunning." "His martial arts are stronger," Zhu Tianhua coldly said. He glided back to the courtyard next to the Tianshu Courtyard. Zheng Lied's face was flushed red, but he could not do anything. He could only glare at the Tianshu Courtyard and see what would happen to Lu Guangdi. They were aware of the head chief's wife's martial arts. In front of Madame Chu, they were not even worth mentioning. When Lu Guangdi landed in the Tianshu Courtyard, Shao Qi and Shao Shi had already put on white veils to cover their faces, only revealing their bright eyes. Shao Shi and Shao Qi sat by the stone table and lazily looked at him. Meanwhile, Suru, Liuxiu, and Menglan were behind the 2 girls, sizing him up. Shao Qi stood up and said, "You're trespassing the imperial residence, you're no different from an assassin. No one would say anything even if you were killed. How dare you?" "Hee, if I want to challenge Chu Li, of course I need some courage. After all, Chu Li is too famous now. Lu Guangdi looked at Shao Qi with a hint of frivolity. Let's not talk about Chu Li's martial arts. His romantic encounters are really enviable. Shao Shi said, Younger sister, this guy should just be crippled. Shao Qi nodded. Lu Guangdi, you came here because you heard that my husband's martial arts were crippled, right? Didn't he recover? Lu Guangdi stared at her face as if he wanted to see through the white veil and see her face clearly. Could it be a rumor? Shao Qi said, Looks like I've wronged you. You're not the type to kick someone when they're down, but my husband is busy and has no time to spare. You should find someone else to be the Tide Listening Pavilion's successor. Du Feng is a good choice. Du Feng. Lu Guangdi smiled and shook his head. I need to be able to find him too. You don't have that kind of ability, but you have the ability to come here and provoke us. Shao Qi said, Your Tide Listening Pavilion's antique study is the rolling wave palm, right? Looks like Madame Chu cares a lot about our Tide Listening Pavilion. Lu Guangdi smiled. That's right, I'm an expert in the rolling wave palm. I'd like to see Madame Chu's antique study. Shao Qi stepped in front of him and pressed her palm down as fast as lightning. Bang! Lu Guangdi stepped forward. Before their palms met, their palm energies had already collided in the air. Lu Guangdi smiled as he looked at Shao Qi, but he was secretly shocked. He was born with a mystical ability that allowed him to read other people's thoughts, just like the Buddhist's mind-reading ability. Therefore, he always took the initiative in everything he did and was able to predict his enemy's moves, giving him an advantage when facing his enemy. He felt that with this special technique and the Tide Listening Pavilion's exquisite martial arts, he would be able to dominate the world. Therefore, he came to Fairy's capital with great ambition. When he heard of Chu Li's reputation, he was overjoyed. He felt like someone had sent him a pillow while he was asleep, and Chu Li was the stepping stone he wanted. He relied on his special technique, so he had a precise grasp of people's hearts. He was able to handle things with ease, and his actions were somewhat wild and unrestrained. He felt that the world was big, and he could take whatever he wanted and everything was up to him. When he saw Xiao Qi and Xiao Shi, although he could not see their faces, he could see the admiration in Zheng Lide and the others' minds. He sighed in his heart. It was like sticking a flower on a pile of cow dung. These two stunning beauties were already married. He felt that taking down Shao Qi would be a piece of cake. Once the woman was taken care of, the man would naturally come out. The flat wave palm was strange and mysterious. It contained the essence of the virtuous like water within it. The palm energy was like a raging wave, one wave after another, unceasingly attacking. In an instant it could attack multiple times. It was impossible to defend against it, and it was almost indestructible. However, he did not expect Shao Qi's palm energy to be so pure and solid. The rolling wave palm energy was like a raging wave crashing into a reef. It could not be broken. Bang! A muffled sound was heard. Shao Qi stood on the spot while Lu Guangdi could not help but take 2 steps back. Chapter 11:24. Shao Qi said coldly, Don't waste your breath. Again. She threw a punch. The two of them got closer, and the fist energy instantly reached Lu Guangdi's chest. Lu Guangdi quickly put his palm in front of his chest to block the slender, white palm. Bang! Lu Guangdi took 2 steps back. His handsome face darkened, and his eyes shot out a cold light. He thought that Shao Qi was beautiful, but no matter how beautiful a woman was, he could not stand above her. She had to bow down to him. Shao Qi's heart technique was mysterious, but she was able to block his eye of insight. How despicable! Moreover, everyone in the courtyard could block his eye of insight, so his most powerful trump card could not be used. As expected of the imperial residence, there were many strange people. There must be something strange about Tianshu courtyard that could restrain the use of divine power, which made him feel restricted. To have a chance of winning, he had to leave Tianshu Courtyard. However, leaving Tianshu Courtyard was useless. Shao Qi's heart technique was mysterious, so despicable. In his anger, he no longer showed mercy. Instead, he wanted to kill her, so he pushed his rolling waves palm to the limit and attacked first. Shao Qi said, "I'm best at swordsmanship." As soon as she said that, the sword on her waist flashed and stabbed Lu Guangdi's chest. Ding! Lu Guangdi's shirt was torn open, revealing his heart protection mirror. The heart protection mirror was only the size of a palm, and it looked like white jade. Shao Qi's sword did not leave a mark on it. Lu Guangdi fiercely pushed out his palm before turning around to leave. Although he seemed to be walking slowly, his speed was surprisingly fast. In an instant, he arrived outside of the Tianshu Courtyard. Then, before Zheng Lide and the others could react, he had already disappeared. He ran away quickly. Shao Qi took a step back to avoid the palm energy and sheathed her sword. Shao Shi shook her head. What a cunning guy! He ran when he saw something was wrong. He's a powerful person, so you have to be careful. Shao Qi said, "This guy is a bit strange. Little sister, is the Tide Listening Pavilion's martial arts this powerful? How can a secluded faction be so famous? How can they not be powerful? The Rolling Waves palm really lives up to its name." She knew that Zheng Lide and the others would not allow Lu Guangdi to barge in, but they could not stop him. Even Zhu Tianhua could not stop him. Lu Guangdi's wisdom and martial arts were outstanding. He should behave himself this time. Shao Shi scoffed. They probably won't give up, Shao Qi said. They'll still look for Chu Li. Then we'll have to watch the show, Xiao Shi smiled. If Chu Li were to return, he would not let this frivolous brat escape. He would definitely cripple him. Chu Li arrived outside Heavenly Demonic Sect but did not enter the ravine. Instead, he raised his voice and shouted, "Where's Du Feng?" His voice was like a spirit tiger coming out of its cage, shaking the world. The whole mountain forest seemed to be trembling because of his shout, which was mixed with the supernatural power of the god-stunning roar. He was not worried that the disciples of the Heavenly Devil Sect would not hear it. "Where is Du Feng?" Seeing that no one came out, Chu Li continued to shout. Heavenly Demonic Sect repaid kindness with ingratitude. "Du Feng, do you have the guts to meet me?" His voice spread far and wide, and it seemed like he could be heard from a dozen miles away. Chu Li had displayed his extremely profound inner energy and cultivation level with these few roars. He had done it to summon Fu Qingya. Ordinary Heavenly Demonic Sect disciples did not have to come out because they could not even withstand a single blow from him. "You're a guest. Please enter the ravine." An elder appeared and gave a fist salute. "Sect leader invites you in. Lead the way," Chu Li said coldly with a dark expression. The elder's eyebrows and beard were all white, but Chu Li did not recognize who he was. He had not seen him in the ravine at Heavenly Demonic Sect. Through the omniscient mirror, he saw that his cultivation level was ordinary and his internal organs were very young. It was obvious that he was a young man in disguise. Chu Li did not mind. The people of Heavenly Demonic Sect could change their appearance at will, so it was most inaccurate to judge someone based on their appearance. The two of them passed through a cave and arrived at the ravine. Chu Li glanced around and scoffed. "This is where Heavenly Demonic Sect is located?" "That's right," the elder said. "However, outsiders can't enter. I haven't asked for your name, young master." "Chu Li." "So it's young Master Chu." The elder walked in casually. It was obvious that he had not heard of Chu Li. Chu Li followed the elder to the Basilica of Heavenly Demonic Sect and saw the Heavenly Demon statue. Fortunately, he had used the life and death scripture to hide the Heavenly Demonic power completely. Otherwise, the Heavenly Demonic power would circulate slightly in front of the Heavenly Demon statue, and he would not be able to control it. This was the wonder of the Heavenly Demon statue. There were 5 people sitting in the basilica. They were Fu Qingya and the 4 grand elders. They were staring at him coldly. Chu Li gave a fist salute and said, "I'm Chu Li." "I'm Fu Qingya," Fu Qingya said. "Chu Li of the north and Du Feng of the south. I'm quite famous. May I know why you're here?" He had learned about the situation in the Ji dynasty because Zhe Ying was disguised as Du Feng. When he heard Chu Li's shout, he was shocked and did not dare to be careless. Chu Li's cultivation level was so high that he had to show up personally. Although Chu Li was not an enlightened master, the 4 grand elders could not handle him. Chu Li scoffed. "Sect leader, you know about Snow Lunar Pavilion, right?" "You're from Snow Lunar Pavilion. I'm here to ask you something. Did you send people to destroy Snow Lunar Pavilion just to help Du Feng advance?" "That's right," Fu Qingya said. Chu Li said coldly, "I want to know why exactly." Fu Qingya said, "Only by cutting off the shackles in one's heart can one advance further in the heavenly demonic power." "Shackles in one's heart?" Chu Li frowned. Fu Qingya said, "There's no harm in telling you. Du Feng was originally a heavenly demonic sect disciple, Zhe Ying, in disguise. He would not tell him that Du Feng was killed first and that Zhe Ying had to disguise as him. He went to the Ji dynasty in disguise as Du Feng and developed a relationship with a disciple of Snow Lunar Pavilion. He's a genius of heavenly demonic sect and is only one step away from perfecting his heavenly demonic power. This step requires him to cut off the shackles of the secular world so that he can be free and free from all worries." Chu Li laughed coldly. "Sect leader Fu, you're ridiculous. How dare you?" Elder Du shouted. When Chu Li glanced at them, the basilica suddenly lit up and the void lit up. Elder Du was shocked and said coldly, "This is heavenly demonic sect. You're not allowed to act so presumptuously here." Chu Li replied coldly, "Sect leader Fu, you're only skilled in martial arts, but you know nothing about Buddhism. To be free from worries means to let go, not to cut them off. You killed a disciple of Snow Lunar Pavilion, and you managed to make Du Feng free, so it means that Zhe Ying has no worries, right? Instead, he'll never be able to let go of them and will always remember them in his heart, never to be free." "Ha, I don't think you're trying to make him perfect. You're afraid that he'll be perfect, aren't you?" Fu Qingya's face darkened and he glared at Chu Li. Chu Li sneered. "Looks like I'm right. What a vicious scheme. I'm impressed." Elder Du and the other 3 looked at Fu Qingya thoughtfully. Fu Qingya felt a little regretful as he did not expect Chu Li to be so powerful as to be able to see right through him. He said coldly, "What do you know? In order to cultivate heavenly demonic power to its ultimate state, one needs great sorrow and enlightenment. Only through great sorrow and pain can one understand the world and let go of everything. If Snow Lunar Pavilion isn't destroyed, he'll never be able to achieve perfect state." Chu Li laughed coldly. "I don't think destroying Snow Lunar Pavilion is enough for him to achieve perfect state. According to what you said, heavenly demonic sect must be destroyed as well. His biggest worry is still heavenly demonic sect. He betrayed heavenly demonic sect and has already let go of it," Fu Qingya replied. Chapter 11:25. Elder Du said, "We don't know where Zhe Ying has gone to. No one can find him, so don't waste your time." "You're here for the reward from the Ji dynasty's emperor, right?" Elder Bai sneered. "You're not here to question Zhe Ying, but to kill him, am I right?" Chu Li replied, "That's right. Not only do I want to kill Zhe Ying, but I also want to kill all those B***stards from heavenly demonic sect. Since you want to kill us, there's no need for us to hold back." Elder Bai said, "Heavenly demonic sect never shows mercy to our enemies." Then, he pounced on Chu Li. The other 3 grand elders pounced on him at the same time. Chu Li's cultivation level was higher than theirs, so they were not confident in fighting him alone. It was safer for the four of them to work together. Besides, they did not need to care about their reputation in the Basilica. All they needed to do was to capture him and kill him. Although they disagreed with Fu Qingya's decision, they would not speak up. In any case, they did not care about the survival of the Ji dynasty's sects, so destroying a sect was not a big deal. Chu Li sneered as the obscure sword at his waist flashed. Elder Du's eyes widened. The tip of the sword was already in front of him, and he could not avoid it. Ding! A slender, white finger hit the tip of the sword and deflected it. The tip of the sword slid across the side of Elder Du's neck, leaving a bloody wound. He quickly covered his wound and retreated. It felt like the cold air was still lingering around his neck and was about to pierce his throat at any time. His throat tightened, and he dared not go any closer. Fu Qingya charged at Chu Li like a ghost. Chu Li used a mysterious step technique to counter him, and the obscure sword flashed. Ding, 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 ding. The tip of the sword and Fu Qingya's fingers clashed as if they were playing a pipa. There was an endless, rhythmic sound. Chu Li's body movement technique might not seem as fast as Fu Qingya's, but his sword technique made up for it. His sword technique was exquisite and mysterious, and he stabbed his sword at unexpected spots at the speed of light. If it were not for Fu Qingya's swift body movement technique, he would have been stabbed long ago. The four Grand Elders took a few steps back and looked at each other. Even a genius like Zhi Ying was no match for the sect leader. However, Chu Li, who was about the same age as Zhi Ying, was on par with the sect leader and did not seem to be at a disadvantage. Ding, 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 ding. Chu Li said coldly, "I'm going to kill you today to avenge the disciples of Snow Lunar Pavilion." How arrogant! Fu Qingya sneered as he flicked the tip of his sword. "With your current abilities, you're no match for me." Let's see. Suddenly, Chu Li's body expanded and his sword shone brightly. Then, his speed doubled and he easily pierced Fu Qingya's chest. Sovereign! The four Grand Elders were startled. The dust-light sword chi exploded, and fragments flew everywhere. Fu Qingya's body expanded as he activated his heavenly demon body. He lowered his head to look at his wound and sneered. "Your sword can't hurt me." Chu Li's palm landed on his chest. Fu Qingya did not mind it at all as he took the hit head-on. Most importantly, the heavenly demon body had been activated all of a sudden, causing his body movement technique to become a little sluggish and not as agile as before. Furthermore, Chu Li's attack was sudden and swift. Bang! Chu Li landed a solid hit on the right side of his chest. Fu Qingya widened his eyes in disbelief and pointed at him. Zhi Ying. He fell to the ground unwillingly. He recognized that the attack just now was the demonic spirit devouring technique and the enlightened master's energy. Sovereign! Elder Du and the other three Grand Elders ignored the danger and rushed forward. Chu Li spat out a mouthful of blood. The heavenly demonic spirit devouring technique had spat out a trace of the enlightened master's energy that it had devoured. Not only had it severely injured Fu Qingya, but Chu Li had also suffered a backlash. He fully activated his heavenly demonic power and ignored his injuries. He grabbed Fu Qingya and flashed away like a ghost to avoid the four Grand Elders' attack. Then, he called out, "Honorable Masters." As he spoke, his appearance suddenly changed to Zhi Ying's appearance. Then, he slammed his palm on Fu Qingya's chest. The heavenly demonic spirit devouring technique activated again and continuously devoured the heavenly demonic orb. You! The four Grand Elders were dumbfounded. Chu Li smiled as he devoured the heavenly demonic orb. "Honorable Masters, you don't recognize me? You're Zhi Ying?" Elder Du asked in disbelief. Chu Li nodded. "That's me. You can't be Chu Li, right?" Elder Bai asked. Chu Li replied, "I'm Chu Li." "You." The four Grand Elders frowned as they were confused. Chu Li continued to devour the heavenly demonic orb. "Chu Li has always been me. How? The four grand elders were in disbelief. Chu Li said, after I killed Du Feng, I disguised myself as Du Feng and went to Snow Lunar Pavilion. I fell in love with a lady, but the sect leader found out and sent someone to kill her. I must avenge this. What's going on with Chu Li? Elder Song asked. Chu Li replied, I was the one who disguised myself as Chu Li. I snuck into the Ji dynasty's public house and killed the original Chu Li. He was a lowly servant, so no one paid attention to him. It was easy for me to disguise myself as him and unknowingly become the chief. Impossible. The four grand elders shook their heads. There might be a glimmer of hope elsewhere, but it was impossible in the Ji dynasty. This was because the Buddhist sect in the Ji dynasty was flourishing, and the Buddhist sect was very sensitive to heavenly demonic sect disciples. Once they discovered them, they would not rest until they were dead. Heavenly demonic sect disciples could only sneak around in the Ji dynasty and could not encounter any Buddhist sect disciples. Chu Li scoffed. Why is it impossible? I had a fortuitous encounter that allowed me to completely conceal the aura of the heavenly demonic power. No matter how powerful a monk is, he won't be able to detect me. I even have a monk friend now. The four grand elders felt that Chu Li was spouting nonsense. Chu Li pursed his lips and said, You'll know whether I'm spouting nonsense or not if you check it out. I'll take my leave first. He turned around and was about to leave. Wait, let go of the sect leader. The four grand elders regained their senses and quickly surrounded him. Chu Li disappeared in a flash like a ghost, not giving them any time to react. The four grand elders looked grim, but they believed Chu Li. Chu Li had performed the heavenly demonic power just now, which was exactly the same as the heavenly demonic power that Fu Qingya had performed. The heavenly demonic field would only appear when one had cultivated to the latter half of the 9th level. This is too. They began to discuss among themselves in disbelief. They already knew that the sect leader was dead or alive. Zhe would not let the sect leader go if he had the chance. Who would have thought that the sect leader would end up like this and be defeated by Zhe? However, the sect leader had gone too far by killing the woman that Zhe liked so that his inner state would not be complete. It was obvious that the sect leader was afraid that Zhe would surpass him, so he had resorted to such underhanded means. It was fine to destroy a small sect, but it was too much to kill the woman that Zhe liked. Compared to the sect leader, they were closer to Zhe. After all, they had raised Zhe since he was young, so no matter how cruel Zhe was, he would not hurt them. Chu Li disappeared with Fu Qingya and reappeared in a cave. This was a cave halfway up a cliff. Howling winds could be heard from outside the cave as if countless people were crying. The cave was clean and tidy, and there was a stone bed and a stone table. A white skeleton was sitting cross-legged on the stone bed, but there were no martial arts secret manuals. Chu Li placed Fu Qingya on the stone table and continued to devour the heavenly demonic orb. Once the heavenly demonic orb was devoured, his heavenly demonic field instantly expanded to 100 meters wide. A cold force was injected into Fu Qingya's forehead, and he slowly regained consciousness. Chu Li looked at him coldly in Zhe Ying's appearance. Sect leader, how do you feel? Fu Qingya frowned at him. Not only did the enlightened master's energy hurt his body, but it also hurt his mind. Fu Qingya was still dispirited and could not be as clear-headed and quick-witted as he usually was. He struggled to think for a while before he asked, Are you colluding with Chu Li? Chu Li shook his head. Sect leader isn't smart enough. Fu Qingya frowned. Could it be that Zhe, your Chu Li? Chapter 11:26. Fu Qingya looked askance at him. How did you become Chu Li? I had a fortuitous encounter that allowed me to conceal the heavenly demonic power's aura, Chu Li replied. I can disguise myself as anyone. What's so special about the heavenly demonic statue? Do you really want to know? Fu Qingya smiled. Chu Li replied, "It's impossible for you to live. You'll have to die for killing snow lunar pavilions." Shu Qing Dai. "It seems like you've fallen in love with her." Fu Qingya smiled. "Zhou Ying, you'll never be able to advance any further in this lifetime." Chu Li replied, "You're the sect leader, but you don't want me to become an enlightened master. You're too selfish." If you become an enlightened master, I won't be able to live. Heavenly Demonic Sect deserves to have an enlightened master, but it's nothing compared to my life," Fu Qingya replied calmly. "Besides, Heavenly Demonic Sect is still doing fine even without an enlightened master for so many years." "Well said." Chu Li replied, "The Heavenly Demonic Statue's inheritance skill is the same as the 4 Grand Elders, right? You want to learn the inheritance skill?" Fu Qingya chuckled with a sarcastic smile. Chu Li replied, "Tell me, what other secrets does Heavenly Demonic Sect have? Tell me too and I'll give you a quick death. Otherwise, I'll make you wish you were dead, and you'll have to endure it for years." His gaze was cold, as if he had already regarded Fu Qingya as a dead man. His anger surged. Fu Qingya smiled. "It seems like you're deeply in love with her." Chu Li glared at him coldly. "I should have killed you a long time ago." Fu Qingya chuckled. "What a pity. No matter how powerful your martial arts are, you won't be able to save your own woman. You want to learn the inheritance skill and disguise as me, right? You're smart, sect leader." Chu Li replied. "Heavenly Demonic Sect leader has many secrets, but I won't tell you." Fu Qingya shook his head. "Besides, you can't stop me from killing myself." Chu Li sneered. "Can you still kill yourself now that you've lost your martial arts?" Heavenly Demonic Sect's founding master has already taken precautions against such a situation, so the sect leader can kill himself at any time without being interrogated. Fu Qingya smiled. "Unfortunately, you won't be able to learn that." Chu Li said, "It's not impossible. The 4 Grand Elders will activate their inherited secret skills, and I'll activate the Heavenly Demonic Power and touch the Heavenly Demonic Orb on the back of the Heavenly Demon Statue. Then, I'll be able to obtain the inheritance of the Heavenly Demon Statue, right?" Fu Qingya's expression changed as he pondered. Chu Li said faintly, "This isn't much of a secret. I'm more interested in what you've collected over the years, where you've hidden them, and what kind of mechanisms you've hidden." He had already read what he wanted to know from Fu Qingya's mind. The leader of the Heavenly Demonic Sect did have a special ability. He had a secret technique that allowed him to sense the location of all the disciples of the Heavenly Demonic Sect in the world after he practiced it. It was similar to the all-seeing divine power. If he wanted to become the true sect leader of Heavenly Demonic Sect and be able to control the Heavenly Demonic Sect formation, borrow the power of the Heavenly Demon Statue to defend against enemies, or borrow the power of the Heavenly Demon Statue to cultivate, he would need the cooperation of the 4 Grand Elders. By activating the inheritance technique, he would find the Heavenly Demon Statue's Heavenly Demonic Orb and then accept the Heavenly Demon Statue's inheritance. The Heavenly Demon Statue's Heavenly Demonic Orb was not constant. It would constantly move around inside the Heavenly Demon Statue and could only be sensed by a unique secret skill. This was the secret skill that only the Heavenly Demonic Sect leader possessed. Chu Li calmly asked, "By the way, what's the Heavenly Demonic Sect leader's unique secret skill?" He. Fu Qingya shook his head and chuckled. He knew that he was going to die, so why would he tell Chu Li about this? He could not wait for Chu Li to die. Without this technique, even if the 4 Grand Elders cooperated and allowed Chu Li to sense the Heavenly Demon Statue on his own, Chu Li would definitely die if he encountered it. The 4 Grand Elders would definitely cooperate with him. After all, their relationship was deep, and they could not wait for him to become the sect leader. He would be more obedient and at ease than the sect leader himself. Their positions would be more stable and comfortable. However, the more they cooperated, the faster Zhe would die. When he thought of Chu Li's imminent death, he felt extremely relieved. Chu Li said, "It's a heart technique. I'm sure you've forgotten about it?" He. Fu Qingya shook his head and smiled. Chu Li could not help but laugh. "Do you really think that I don't know about this technique just because it's a secret? The heavenly demonic inner energy starts from the Dantian, passes through the spirit palace, and goes up to the middle residence." "Oh no, it goes up to the middle residence, and then the spirit palace." Chu Li explained the heart technique intermittently. He had obtained it from observing Fu Qingya's mind. Fu Qingya's expression stiffened as he vaguely felt that something was wrong. Chu Li sneered. "As the sect leader, you don't care about the prosperity of heavenly demonic sect. Instead, you only care about your own interests. Even if you die, you won't be able to face your ancestors. Let's see how you're going to face them when you ascend to heaven." After Fu Qingya died, he would ascend to the heavenly demonic realm and would not be reincarnated. It was not an empty promise to face the ancestors, so the ancestors were very powerful. Seeing that his words had dispelled Fu Qingya's doubts, Chu Li continued to talk about the heart technique. In one breath, he finally understood this strange technique, which was called the heavenly demonic calamity. If anyone else mastered this strange technique, it would indeed be a disaster for heavenly demonic sect. Chu Li sighed. "All right, sect leader, you can die now." Fu Qingya sneered. "I'll be waiting for you up there." Without any hesitation, Fu Qingya stopped breathing as soon as he finished speaking. He died right away. Chu Li was still worried, so he slit Fu Qingya's neck with a flying blade and separated his head from his body. Then, he drifted away. Fu Qingya would turn into a skeleton with no one knowing his identity, just like the other skeletons here. However, since he was at such a high peak, no one would come to disturb him, so it was a good place to bury his bones. Chu Li returned to heavenly demonic sect in a flash. The 4 Grand Elders were having a discussion in the basilica. They had already sent someone to inquire about Chu Li, so they sighed helplessly when they saw Chu Li. "How's the sect leader?" Elder Du scoffed. Chu Li's figure transformed into Fu Qingya's in the blink of an eye. He stood with his hands behind his back and smiled. "How is it? You?" The 4 Grand Elders were shocked. They did not expect Chu Li to change his appearance so easily and accurately. He looked exactly like the sect leader, so they could not recognize him at all. "The sect leader, he?" Elder Bai asked. Chu Li replied, "I've sent the sect leader to the heavenly demonic realm. The sect leader has passed the position to me." "You?" The 4 Grand Elders frowned at him. Chu Li smiled. "The sect leader has passed on the heavenly demonic disaster to me." "That's impossible." The 4 Grand Elders shook their heads. Fu Qingya hated Zhe to the core. Since Zhe had used such an insidious method to deal with him, Zhe would not forgive him easily. How could he agree to pass the position of the sect leader to Zhe? Furthermore, the heavenly demonic disaster was his life-saving measure. Zhe could not kill him without the heavenly demonic disaster. Passing the heavenly demonic disaster to Zhe would be equivalent to courting death. They found it hard to believe and were slightly worried. "Zhe, will there be any problems with the heavenly demonic disaster that the sect leader passed on to you?" "There won't be." Chu Li shook his head and smiled. "The sect leader is a smart man. He knows that his time has passed and that it's time for him to pass the position to me. He's very smart to pass on the heavenly demonic disaster to me and pass the position to me." He raised his left hand as he spoke. There was a dark gray ring on the little finger of his left hand. It was so inconspicuous that it could almost be ignored. However, the 4 Grand Elders were very sensitive to this item. It was the sect leader's ring. Heavenly demonic sect disciples could change their appearances, but the sect leader's ring could not. They could tell at a glance that every disciple could sense the sect leader's ring, so they could tell whether it was real or fake at a glance. The sect leader passed the position to you. The 4 grand elders were shocked. Chapter 11:27. P.S. Update complete. This. The 4 of them hesitated. They did not know if they should admit it or not. After all, the position of sect leader was not legitimate and had not been officially handed over by the previous sect leader. It was obvious that he had been coerced into taking the position. Chu Li scoffed. Honorable Masters, is it better for me or Fu Qingya to be the sect leader? Sect leader Fu is very qualified. Elder Du scoffed. Chu Li shook his head. He's just ruling by doing nothing. Since he became the sect leader, has he done anything practical? Isn't he just sticking to the old ways and doing nothing? That's what's rare. Elder Du nodded. If he breaks the rules by doing this or that, it'll be a disaster for heavenly demonic sect. Honorable Master Du, you want me to be more obedient, right? Chu Li scoffed. Elder Bai laughed. Zheng, you're too adventurous and bold. If we really hand the position of sect leader to you, we won't be at ease if we don't know what you'll do to heavenly demonic sect. Chu Li said, Don't worry, I'll only make heavenly demonic sect better. Once I become an enlightened master, heavenly demonic sect will be able to travel the world openly. Even if you really become an enlightened master, we'll still have to do this. We can't do it openly, Elderly said. This is in line with the mentality of heavenly demonic power. All right, it's up to you, Chu Li said helplessly. Anyway, I'm definitely going to be the sect leader. Oh right, I'm going to issue the first order as sect leader. The 4 of them looked at each other and nodded helplessly, acknowledging Chu Li's position as sect leader. Chu Li secretly sighed in relief, but he said, Send 10 disciples to Fairy's capital in the Ji dynasty and the various imperial residences. Imperial residences? Elder Du shook his head. We can't go to the Ji dynasty. It's too dangerous. Elder Bai nodded. The Tempest Temple and Titanium Temple are there. It'll be fine if we go to a remote place, but it'll be too dangerous in Fairy's capital. How can there be such a coincidence? Chu Li pouted. Can the eminent monks Sarira conceal the heavenly demonic energy? It's possible, but the eminent monk Sarira will also suppress the heavenly demonic power, Elder Du said with a frown. This method won't work. The heavenly demonic power will be crippled over time. Chu Li asked, Are the disciples of heavenly demonic sect so useless? The 4 great elders frowned when they heard this. Elder Li said in a deep voice, In the Fu dynasty, the disciples of heavenly demonic sect are like fish in water. I can only struggle in the Fu dynasty. Chu Li shook his head. It's really boring. The 4 elders sighed helplessly. It was rare enough that heavenly demonic sect was like a fish in water in the Fu dynasty. If they really wanted to roam the world unhindered, they would be able to travel to any nation at will without fear. Then, they would not have been holed up here. They would have been unbridled a long time ago. If they could not reach this nation, they would have no qualms about going to another nation. It's settled then. Chu Li waved his hand and said, I'll think of something. You guys pick 10 people. They must be quick-witted and able to endure the loneliness. Wait for my notice before heading over. He had to think of a way for the heavenly demonic sect disciples to conceal the aura of the heavenly demonic power. The Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture was a preliminary idea of his, but he still needed to think about it carefully. His understanding of the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture was not deep enough. Sect leader, why are you sending people to the Ji dynasty? Elder Du asked. Sect leader, are you really going to continue living in the Ji dynasty as Chu Li? Of course. Chu Li nodded. Pretending to be Chu Li is much better than staying here. Don't disturb me. What about the heavenly demonic sect? It's equivalent to me going into isolated cultivation. Chu Li waved his hand and said impatiently, I'll come back if I have something to do. Oh right, help me find a way to obtain the dragon taming technique. Yes. The 4 elders nodded helplessly. Chuli waved his hand and disappeared abruptly. The 4 great elders looked at each other and felt that it was unreal. In such a short time, heavenly demonic sect had changed their sect leader. It was a feast for the eyes. Sect leader hasn't inherited the heavenly demon statue yet, Elder Du said. Elder Bai chuckled. I guess he doesn't dare to. The 4 of them laughed. The heavenly demon statue had taught him a lesson twice, so it must have been traumatized. It was early morning when Chuli returned to Tianshu courtyard. Xiao Qi was practicing her swordsmanship. Her white dress fluttered like a fairy and her sword flashed like lightning. Xiao Shi was also slowly practicing a fist technique. Her movements were gentle and graceful as if she was dancing. When they saw Chuli, the 2 ladies stopped what they were doing and sat at the stone table with him. Lu Su came over to serve him tea and left. How did it go over there? Xiao Qi asked. Chuli nodded. I've killed her. I've avenged her. Where's the guy who came to challenge me? He did not want to talk about Shu Qingdai anymore. He felt pained and guilty, but there was nothing he could do. He was like an ant compared to his predecessors. Only by becoming an enlightened master could he be free. The desire in his heart grew stronger as he wondered if heavenly demonic sect could obtain the dragon taming technique. He was chased away by younger sister. Xiao Shi scoffed. His name is Lu Guangdi. He sought refuge with King Jing and is now King Jing's protector. Chu Li's expression darkened. Xiao Shi said, I think he just sought refuge with King Jing. He wanted to make a name for himself by stepping on you. Although he didn't manage to do so, he still made a name for himself. Everyone in Fairy's capital knows that his cultivation level is high. Chu Li nodded slowly. Forget it. Xiao Qi said, we can't fall out with King Jing because of this. Chu Li said, since King Jing managed to recruit Lu Guangdi, he's not an ordinary person. Has King Jing recruited many martial arts masters? No. Xiao Shi shook her head. He's becoming more and more cautious. He didn't recruit martial arts masters wantonly. Lu Guangdi is the only one. It seems like he's the talent that King Jing desperately needs. He's very intelligent, Xiao Qi said. Chu Li nodded thoughtfully. I'd like to see for myself. King Jing's ascension to the throne is getting louder. It's almost inevitable. We shouldn't offend him if we can. He's the future emperor, Xiao Shi said. Chu Li smiled. Too many things can happen in 10 years. Xiao Shi said, it seems like the emperor has decided on King Jing. King Ping was originally a threat, but now, he's voluntarily given up his military power, which means he's withdrawing from the competition. Chu Li smiled but did not say anything. Of course, he knew that King Ping would fight for the throne, but it was not appropriate for him to tell others. Xiao Qi asked, has King Ping really given up? She frowned slightly as she was puzzled. Xiao Shi nodded. He's very tactful. This way, the emperor won't be so troubled. Xiao Qi sighed softly. Maybe he's disheartened. She sympathized with King Ping. He fought hard at the border but failed to protect his wife. It must be very painful. Suddenly, footsteps were heard outside. Chief Zhu stood outside Tianshu courtyard. Chief, there's an urgent letter for you. Bring it in, Chu Li said. Chief Zhu walked in briskly and presented a letter with both hands. Chu Li took out the letter. There was only a mark on the letter and no words. Chu Li frowned and nodded. Chief Zhu left the room. What's going on? Xiao Shi asked. Chu Li said, I'll be back soon. He suddenly disappeared, and when he appeared outside the imperial residence, he had turned into a middle-aged man. Chapter 11:28. P.S. There will only be one update at noon. Zhuo Feiyang sat quietly by the table. He was dressed in a green robe. His face was like jade and his eyes were like stars. He was casually fiddling with his silver cup as he looked out of the window. His gaze was blank. Chu Li, who had transformed into a middle-aged man, sat opposite him and asked, "What's the matter?" His appearance had changed, but his voice remained the same. Zhuo Feiyang knew it was Chu Li. Zhuo Feiyang did not turn around. He continued to fiddle with his cup as he looked out of the window. "I'm afraid my identity is going to be exposed." Chu Li asked, "What happened?" Zhuo Feiyang's identity was a mix of truth and falsehood, so there was no question of whether his identity would be exposed or not. Zhuo Feiyang had only been contacting Chu Li, and Chu Li had always approached him as a stranger. There was no evidence at all, so Chu Li could not just say that Zhuo Feiyang was a problem, then everyone else was a problem. As the two sat opposite each other, Chu Li could clearly see Zhuo Feiyang's serious expression. "There's a new guest in the imperial residence of King Jing. You should know about it. It's the heir of Tide Listening Pavilion, Lu Guangdi." Zhuo Feiyang frowned. "Yes, he challenged me before." Chu Li nodded. "I heard he's a powerful person." Zhuo Feiyang scoffed. "He's annoying. He has his eyes on me." "How did he target you?" Chu Li asked. "Did you guys fight?" "Yes, I'm no match for him." Zhuo Feiyang frowned. "Fighting him feels like I'm fighting you. I have the upper hand at every turn. My hands and feet are tied. It's suffocating." Chu Li frowned. He was able to do this because he had the omniscient mirror. It could see through people's hearts, so of course he had the upper hand. Shao Qi could do it, Lu Yurong could do it, and now there was Lu Guangdi. "Did you guys compete with palm or sword?" Chu Li asked. "Is his martial arts outstanding?" "I don't think it's about martial arts. His martial arts isn't that powerful. His techniques are ordinary, and he only uses them at the right time. That's why he's able to restrain me. When others fight him, they feel the same way. It's very frustrating." Chu Li pondered and slowly nodded. "Is he like this too? He has the upper hand at every turn?" "Seems like it." Zhuo Feiyang said, "It's as if he can read people's minds. He is an extremely intelligent person, just like Mississippi. It's as if he can see through people. He's extremely smart, just like Lady." The Zhuo Feiyang was referring to was Shao Qi. If Shao Qi could see through people's minds, then so could he. Since Zhuo Feiyang felt the same way when facing Lu Guangdi, it meant that Lu Guangdi also had the same supernatural ability to see through people's minds. "He's been suspect me recently." Zhuo Feiyang frowned. Chu Li frowned. "What's his status in the imperial residence of King Jing?" "King Jing thinks very highly of him," Zhuo Feiyang said. "He asks for his opinion on everything. If he continues, he, Zhuo Liyang, and Feather, A. If this continues, he will definitely find me," Zhuo Feiyang said. Chu Li chuckled. "You're too timid. What right does he have to expose you? Did you do anything to hinder the imperial residence of King Jing?" "With Li He King, he. But I." Zhuo Feiyang frowned. Chu Li said, "Your identity and background are very clear. You're an abandoned general of the E-Public House. You have a grudge against the E-Public House. Even if you're loyal to the E-Public House, it's not a big deal. The imperial residence of King Jing and the E-Public House are not enemies. I'm afraid that he won't listen to what I have to say and will just kill me." Zhuo Feiyang shook his head. "He's a foreign advisor. He can command the protectors of the imperial residence. He was not even Lu Guangdi's match in a one-on-one fight, let alone with the imperial residence's protectors." "Will King Jing attack you?" Chu Li asked calmly. Zhuo Feiyang shook his head. "Who calls the shots in the public house?" Chu Li asked. Zhuo Feiyang replied, "King Jing will be in charge of the important matters, while Lu Yurong will be in charge of the small matters." "Lu Yurong hasn't left yet?" Chu Li frowned. Zhuo Feiyang said, Lu Yurong has been staying at King Jing's imperial residence for quite some time now. She is King Jing's most trusted confidant. Almost everything goes through her hands. There are even many things that King Jing does not know about. She was the one who handled them all. Chu Li furrowed his brows and sighed. He did not expect Lu Yurong's status to rise so quickly. When he was in Fairy's capital, Lu Yurong was only a guest at King Jing's imperial residence. She did not fully join King Jing's side. Now, it seemed like Lu Yurong was going all out to support King Jing and help him seize the throne. He knew Lu Yurong's capabilities better than anyone else. Her martial arts might not be as good as his, but her wisdom was definitely not inferior to his. She might even be better than him. After all, he was only able to suppress her because of the omniscient mirror. If not for the omniscient mirror's ability to see through people's minds, he would not be a match for Lu Yurong. Don't worry. If Lu Yurong is in charge, she won't do anything to you, Chu Li said. Although Lu Yurong hated the public house, she had some friendly relations with him. If she really realized that Zhuo Feiyang was his chess piece, she would not kill him. Instead, she would propose a trade. This was in line with her character. Then what's the relationship between Lu Guangdi and Lu Yurong? Chu Li asked. Lu Guangdi seems to like Lu Yurong, Zhuo Feiyang said. Chu Li glanced at him and said, Does Lu Guangdi have to listen to Lu Yurong, or does he have to stay out of it? He has to listen to Lu Yurong as well, Zhuo Feiyang said. However, Lu Guangdi seems to be unconvinced. He thinks that he can't listen to a woman, especially a woman that he liked. He has always wanted to surpass Lu Yurong. That's why he challenged you earlier. Chu Li thought about it. Unconvinced by Lu Yurong. Interesting. Lu Yurong doesn't seem to mind, Zhuo Feiyang said. Chu Li smiled. I know Lu Yurong's temper. She's the only one in the world. She won't tolerate anyone provoking her. You should bear with it for now. I think he'll be in trouble soon. Lu Yurong is not someone to be trifled with. All right. Zhuo Feiyang nodded helplessly. I hope that before Lu Yurong takes care of him, she won't kick me out of the imperial residence. He had put in so much effort and used so much time to finally stand firm. He really did not want all his efforts to go to waste. Once he was kicked out of the imperial residence, how could he raise his head in front of Chu Li? Although Chu Li was now famous in the fairies' capital and was even known as the Chu Li of the North, Zhuo Feiyang had always thought that he could reach Chu Li's level as long as he worked hard and encountered some opportunities. He was not completely convinced. Chu Li said a few more words to him and told him to calm down. Then, he stood up and left. After leaving the restaurant, he walked along the main road for about a mile before turning into a small alley. He wanted to take a shortcut back to the imperial residence. A handsome young man in a blue tunic blocked the alley's path. He stood in the middle of the alley and smiled at Chu Li. It was Lu Guangdi. Chu Li frowned at him and continued walking forward. Lu Guangdi coldly said, Stop. Chu Li stood still and looked at him. What business do you have, Your Excellency? Who are you? Lu Guangdi calmly asked. Chu Li replied, Why should I tell you who I am? Get out of my way, otherwise don't blame me for being rude. Lu Guangdi chuckled and shook his head. Zhuo Feiyang really has a problem. He could sense that Chu Li did not know any martial arts, but he could not see through him. There was an invisible force blocking him from seeing through Chu Li's heart. Chapter 11:29. Chu Li frowned and scoffed. You're too smart for your own good. What's wrong with my young master? He had already thought of a plan when he was sitting in the restaurant. Now that Lu Guangdi had come to intercept him, he would throw this identity at him. He wanted to make Lu Guangdi dizzy and unable to tell the truth from the lie. Lu Guangdi frowned. Young master. Chu Li laughed coldly. Don't tell me you want to know my young master's identity? What identity? Lu Guangdi scoffed. Chu Li showed a look of disdain and scoffed arrogantly. Do you think you're qualified to know this? Sneaky and shameful. What's there to be proud of? Lu Guangdi said coldly. Chu Li laughed. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. I advise you not to cause trouble for Tide Listening Pavilion. Just act like you don't know anything. Otherwise, you'll just embarrass yourself and lose your life. Then I'd like to hear who you are. Lu Guangdi scoffed and said impatiently, How arrogant! He was secretly shocked. How did this guy know he was from Tide Listening Pavilion? Then, he thought that Zhuo Feiyang might have told him. It was not a big deal. Forget it. You won't give up until you see your coffin. Chu Li shook his head and said calmly, Watch my palm. He flashed in front of Lu Guangdi and patted his shoulder. Lu Guangdi retreated like a ghost. He was shocked by Chu Li's body movement technique. This pat was unexpected and unavoidable. Chu Li followed him like a shadow. Lu Guangdi retreated quickly, but Chu Li was even faster. He patted his shoulder again. Lu Guangdi's back was already sweating. Those 2 pats were just light pats. If they were filled with palm force, he might not have been able to take it. What was worse was that his opponent clearly did not know any martial art. Yet, he had such a miraculous body movement technique. You're just relying on your body movement technique. Lu Guangdi scoffed. The corner of Chu Li's mouth curled into a cold smile as he slapped his palm on his shoulder again. Lu Guangdi dodged like a ghost, but it was useless. He felt like a mountain was pressing down on his left shoulder. It was as if he was going to be buried under the mountain forever. He could not move at all. He desperately channeled energy into his legs. His legs were already bent and trembling. He was about to kneel at any time. However, he was unwilling to give up and wanted to stand up straight. It looked as if he was squatting. Chu Li chuckled. You're quite strong-willed. He pressed his palm down. Bam! Lu Guangdi fell to the ground in a sorry state, looking like a dog eating mud. Chu Li looked down at him from above and said coldly, How arrogant of you. Is that all you've got? You! Lu Guangdi hurriedly stood up. His handsome face was so red that it looked like it was about to bleed. He glared fiercely at Chu Li, his eyes blazing like torches. Chu Li curled his lips and said in disdain, You're just a disciple of Tide Listening Pavilion. That's all you amount to. If you continue to meddle in other people's business, I'll destroy you or Tide Listening Pavilion. You sure talk big, Lu Guangdi said coldly. Chu Li gave him a sidelong glance. You don't believe me? Do you want me to destroy the Tide Listening Pavilion for you to see? You! Lu Guangdi gritted his teeth but did not say anything. He was shocked by Chu Li's martial arts and secretly thought that even if Tide Listening Pavilion could stop him, they might not be able to do so if there were a few more of them. Chu Li waved his hand. Get lost, mind your own business. Do you think Zhuo Feiyang can hide it from others? Lu Guangdi scoffed. Do you think he can hide it from Miss Lu? Chu Li smiled faintly. Who wants to hide it? Do you think Lu Yurong doesn't know? You're just a smartass who thinks everyone else is stupid and thinks you're the smartest. Get lost. Lu Guangdi shouted, Miss Lu knows? That's impossible. Chu Li said, If you go up to her and tell her that she can't turn a blind eye, don't blame me for being impolite. Do you think I don't know where Tide Listening Pavilion is? Lu Guangdi let out a disdainful smile. Do you really know where Tide Listening Pavilion is? Tide Listening Pavilion's location was a big secret. Outsiders did not know about it. Chu Li calmly said, Tribute Town. Lu Guangdi's expression changed. Chu Li scoffed. Now you're honest, huh? Get lost. Lu Guangdi's expression darkened as he stared at him without saying a word. Chu Li slowly walked to his side and walked straight ahead. He was about to bump into Lu Guangdi. Lu Guangdi tilted his body to make way, allowing Chu Li to slowly walk away. When Chu Li was more than 20 meters away, Lu Guangdi hurriedly turned around and shouted, How did you know? Chu Li scoffed and waved his hand without turning his head. He took a step forward and disappeared into the alleyway. Lu Guangdi felt a chill down his spine. Tide Listening Pavilion's location was a top secret. Outsiders could not possibly know about it. Only Tide Listening Pavilion disciples knew about it. Every generation, only one Tide Listening Pavilion disciple would leave the martial arts world. Other than Lu Guangdi, no other Tide Listening Pavilion disciple had left. Then how did other people know about Tide Listening Pavilion's location? Which family did Zhuo Feiyang belong to? How could he be so resourceful? If he really raided Tide Listening Pavilion's home, then Lu Guangdi would really be a sinner. Tide Listening Pavilion was hidden from the world because they were afraid of this. It seemed like he had underestimated the heroes of the world. Just relying on a special technique would not allow him to dominate the world. His telepathy was ineffective against this guy, and it was ineffective against Zhuo Feiyang as well. Lu Guangdi stood in the same spot with an uncertain expression on his face. Should he teach Zhuo Feiyang a lesson, or should he play dumb? After a long while, he still could not make up his mind. He secretly regretted his rash actions. He should not have jumped out so early. He had underestimated his enemy, and did not take Zhuo Feiyang seriously, causing him to fall into a passive position. If he had been observing in the dark, he would not have ended up in this situation. When Chu Li returned to the imperial residence, he saw someone standing at the bottom of the stairs. Liang. When Liang saw Chu Li, he hurriedly went forward and fist saluted. Head Chief Chu. Chu Li smiled. Why are you here? I'm here to report on the case. Liang replied. Chu Li waved his hand and smiled. I'm no longer a member of the Secret Guardians Hall, so there's no need to report. How was it? Did you get anything out of the interrogation? No. Liang smiled bitterly. Chu Li was surprised. You didn't get anything out of the interrogation? Did I make a mistake? You're right, head chief. Liang shook his head and sighed. That guy committed suicide. Chu Li could not help but laugh. All disciples of the Holy Church of Light do this. Did you guys not take any precautions? We were too careless. Liang sighed. The commander was furious, but it was useless. The dead can't be resurrected. We couldn't interrogate the Holy Church of Light to kill Minister Li's family. Chu Li slowly nodded and did not deny it. Liang sighed in shame. It's all because of our incompetence. Chu Li waved his hand. The disciples of the Holy Church of Light are indeed difficult to deal with. It's fine if they're dead. You can investigate Minister Li and find out why he was killed and his entire family was annihilated. The commander has already closed the case, Liang said. Chu Li was stunned. He smiled. That's good too. Saves us the trouble. It was not that Gu Yu was muddle-headed. It was just that he did things according to his position. Everyone was driven by their own interests, and it was normal for them to be blinded by greed. Gu Yu did not wish for the case to continue. It was best to cut the Gordian knot and close the case. As for the truth behind the case, it was not Gu Yu's concern. But there's a problem, Liang said hesitantly. Chu Li frowned at him. Chapter 1130. Chu Li's face darkened. He scoffed and said, Let's go. We'll talk inside. Yes. Liang felt suffocated, and the immense pressure was like a mountain pressing down on him. His legs trembled, and he involuntarily wanted to kneel down, but he did his best to resist. He followed Chu Li into the imperial residence of King An and quickly sat down in the main hall. What are the three Ning brothers doing? Chu Li sat on the armchair and pointed to the opposite side. He frowned and said, There aren't any cases in the Secret Guardians Hall right now, right? No cases. Liang sat opposite him and shook his head. I don't know what the three Ning brothers are doing. I haven't seen them for a few days. After asking around, no one has seen them. It's as if they've disappeared. They left without saying anything. No. Liang shook his head and said, if they don't show up tomorrow, the commander will issue an arrest warrant and announce that they have betrayed the secret guardians' hall. Nonsense. Chu Li scoffed. Liang said helplessly, they haven't been seen for 7 days, and they didn't even inform us in advance. It's really suspicious that they left without a sound, so, the commander asked me to inform the head chief. I'm not a member of the secret guardians' hall now. Do as you please, Commander, Chu Li said coldly. Liang groaned to himself. The more he put it in such a manner, the more troublesome it would be. If they really sent out a wanted notice, then they would start a huge feud. They knew the head chief's capabilities. The secret guardians' hall was not afraid that the head chief would go against them, but they were afraid that he would stand by and do nothing when they needed his help. For example, the case of Minister Li's family being massacred had caused a sensation in Fairy's capital. The Emperor had ordered for the case to be solved. Without the head chief's help, it would be difficult for the secret guardians' hall to solve the case on their own. It was inevitable that the Emperor would think that they were incompetent. Accompanying the Emperor was like accompanying a tiger. The Emperor's heart was unpredictable. After 2 or 3 times, the secret guardians' hall would welcome a huge change, and most people would be out of luck. Liang said embarrassedly, what the commander meant was for the head steward to help out and see if you can find them and inform them. Chu Li frowned and looked at him. Commander, are you saying that I'm the one who ordered this? I don't have such intentions. Liang quickly waved his hand. Chu Li scoffed. I'll give it a try. Whether or not I can find it depends on the outcome. Don't get your hopes up. It won't be a problem if the head chief takes action. Liang hurriedly smiled. Chu Li said, wait a moment, let me take a look. Yes. Liang cupped his fist. Chu Li returned to his courtyard and took out a small box from the cupboard. Inside the box were a few strands of hair. He used the all-seeing divine technique to sense the location of the Ning brothers, and his face slowly darkened. He actually couldn't sense the 3 of them. It was as if the 3 of them had completely disappeared from the world. Unwilling to give up, he tried again, but there was still no sign of the 3 people. There were 2 possibilities for this to happen. One was that they were wearing items that could suppress divine powers, or they were within the range of treasures, like the Titanium Temple and the Tempest Temple. The second possibility was that they were already dead. He went to the lobby. Liang was drinking tea and waiting patiently. Head Chief. Seeing him enter, Liang hurriedly stood up and cupped his fist. Chu Li's face darkened as he shook his head. This isn't good. I can't sense them. Either they've gone to a special place, or they're dead. Your commander shouldn't issue a wanted notice. Just send someone to look for them. This? Liang smiled bitterly. He knew that his commander was not a magnanimous person. The Ning brothers did not listen to the commander's orders at all. The commander hated them to the core, and would not let go of such an opportunity. He must punish them as a warning to the others. Chu Li said, tell Commander Gu that it's up to him whether to listen or not. Yes. Liang sighed in relief. Chu Li waved his hand. Go do what you need to do. Goodbye. Liang hurriedly cupped his fists and left. Watch. As Liang's figure disappeared, Chu Li paced back and forth in the lobby with his hands behind his back. Finally, he called out to Chief Zhu and asked him to send someone to look for Yang Zongwen. Yang Zongwen soon arrived. He was dressed in a blue tunic and looked energetic. Centurion. Yang Zongwen bowed respectfully. Sit down and talk. Chu Li sat on the armchair and waved his hand. What's going on with the Ning brothers? The Ning brothers? Yang Zongwen was about to sit on the armchair opposite him when he heard Chu Li's question. The 3 of them were ordered by the commander to track down a Tempest Temple disciple. A Tempest Temple disciple? Chu Li frowned. A Tempest Temple disciple stirred up trouble again? The commander said that Minister Li's case might be related to the Tempest Temple, so he sent the Ning brothers to take a look, Yang Zongwen said. Chu Li's face darkened and he sneered. Commander Gu, what a good move! The Tempest Temple would not be polite to the secret guardians of the Secret Guardians Hall. They would cripple their martial arts and throw them in a place where no one could find them. Just like Qin Jin and the other 5, they would slowly die of old age and live an ordinary life. If he knew that the Ning brothers would end up like this, he would definitely fight the Tempest Temple out of anger. From Gu Yu's point of view, he was no match for the Tempest Temple. He might even be crippled by the Tempest Temple and end up like Qin Jin and the others. This tactic of killing with a borrowed knife was truly impressive. Gu Yu was not good at doing things, but he was good at harming people. Chu Li scoffed. The commander said that the Ning brothers disappeared without a trace. It seems like they've defected. He's going to issue an arrest warrant. Yang Zongwen was stunned. No way? They were personally sent by Commander Gu. Chu Li scoffed. It seems like he hates the Mei Air Courtyard to the core. He's determined to remove this thorn. We're disobeying orders, but there's no need to resort to such means, is there? Yang Zongwen frowned. This is too much, too disappointing. This is a warning to everyone. Let's see who dares to disobey orders. Chu Li sneered. Even if the Emperor finds out, he won't say anything. Yang Zongwen frowned and thought for a while. The plan now is to get the Ning brothers back as soon as possible. We'll have to ask the Centurion to take action. Chu Li shook his head. I can't sense them. How about this, you go to the Mercy Temple? Forget it, I'll go there myself. You go back first. With a wave of his hand, he disappeared. The next moment, he appeared in front of the Mercy Temple outside Fairy's capital. He said to the 2 novice monks outside the temple, 2 young masters, is Fa Yuan here? I'm Chu Li. The Xian temple was bustling with pilgrims. It was bustling with noise and excitement. Chu Li stood at the bottom of the stairs outside the temple with his hands behind his back. He was not afraid of Gu Yu issuing an arrest warrant, but he was worried about the Ning brothers' lives. One of the novice monks ran in while the other one looked at him curiously. Fa Yuan soon appeared. His gray robe fluttered in the wind. He looked like a handsome tree in the wind. He stepped out of the temple and came to the bottom of the stairs. He pressed his palms together. Brother Chu. Chu Li smiled. I'm here to trouble you again. Brother Chu, you don't come to me for no reason. Let's talk in the meditation room. Fa Yuan smiled. Chapter 1131. P.S. Update complete. Brother Chu, please speak your mind. Fa Yuan invited Chu Li to sit at the stone table in the temple. Before the tea was served, Fa Yuan asked. Chu Li told him about the 3 Ning brothers. Fa Yuan frowned. If it's a secret guardian from the Secret Guardians Hall, I'm afraid I can't say anything. This belongs to the Exorcist College. Chu Li looked at him with a faint smile. Fa Yuan looked helpless. All right, I'll ask and give you an answer tomorrow. But don't worry, the temple won't kill easily. Chu Li scoffed. Crippling them is a pain in the ass. Fa Yuan smiled. As long as their lives aren't in danger, nothing else matters. Since you crippled the 3 of them, I can only cripple the 3 grandmasters from the Tempest Temple, Chu Li said. Fa Yuan said, It seems like Brother Chu doesn't believe me. He knew that Chu Li said this because he was afraid that he would order for the 3 of them to be crippled. After all, they were secret guardians from the Imperial House and the opponents of the Tempest Temple. Having 3 less opponents was not a bad thing. Chu Li scoffed. You're a disciple of the Tempest Temple. All right, I won't do anything if they're not crippled. Fa Yuan smiled. Chu Li nodded in satisfaction. All right, I'll take my leave. Is Snow Lunar Pavilion okay? Fa Yuan asked. Chu Li's face darkened. Fa Yuan was shocked. Did something really happen? Brother Chu, you've shocked everyone with your outburst. No one dares to do anything. Chu Li sighed. I was too late. A good friend died. Du Feng really did a lot of harm. When he thought of Shu Qingdai, he still felt guilty. He wanted to kill Fu Qingya a few more times. Amit Ba. Fa Yuan placed his palms together and chanted solemnly. At that moment, a novice monk came in and served tea. He looked at Chu Li curiously and slowly left. Chu Li said, Forget it. Let's not talk about this anymore. Why are you staying at the Mercy Temple? I'll be cultivating at the Mercy Temple for some time, Fa Yuan said. Chu Li asked, What is the Tempest Temple trying to do? Fa Yuan was the top disciple of the Tempest Temple. He had to deal with all sorts of troubles in the martial arts world. He must be planning something by staying at the Mercy Temple. Fa Yuan shook his head and smiled. Chu Li asked thoughtfully, Is it about the Emperor's plan to appoint a crown prince? He read the news from Fa Yuan's mind. Fa Yuan looked at him in surprise. Chu Li secretly praised the Tempest Temple for being well informed. He had never heard of this news before. The appointment of a crown prince was a big deal. Once the crown prince was appointed, the title would be confirmed and everything would be settled. If it had been anyone else, they might not have been able to secure their position as the crown prince, much less become the emperor. However, King Jing was talented and had the support of the courtiers. As soon as he sat on the crown prince's position, he was unshakable. It was difficult for others to cause any trouble. If King Jing was appointed as the crown prince, then King Ping would not stand a chance anymore. Even if he regained control of the military, he would not stand a chance unless he rebelled. However, once he rebelled, the Ji dynasty would be done for. Fa Yuan said, King Jing's succession has been decided. The outcome has been determined. Chu Li said slowly. Fa Yuan said, Once you become the crown prince, your martial arts will improve by leaps and bounds. You'll reach the peak of the Grandmaster's boundary, and only the enlightened masters will be able to threaten you. Chu Li nodded slowly. He really did not know about this. Fa Yuan said, But it doesn't mean that there won't be any changes. At this time, I'm afraid that someone will try to assassinate King Jing. Once he succeeds the crown prince's position, it'll be impossible to assassinate him again. This will be the last wave of madness. Chu Li pondered and asked, When will the crown prince be appointed? The specific time hasn't been decided yet. Fa Yuan shook his head. The emperor has this idea. Chu Li nodded slowly and stood up. I don't meddle in politics if I'm not in a position. I'm not a courtier, it doesn't matter who becomes the emperor. Fa Yuan smiled and shook his head. King Jing and you have a good relationship. He won't be a hindrance if he becomes the crown prince. There's really no need to be anxious. Could it be that the Tempest Temple is anxious? Chu Li asked. That's not the case. Fa Yuan said, King Jing has no enmity with the Tempest Temple. Seeing how anxious you all are, it doesn't seem like it. Chu Li smiled. Could it be that the Tempest Temple wants to assassinate him? Of course not. Fa Yuan quickly waved his hand. Chu Li walked out. I just said it without thinking, it's fine if it's not. In the backyard of the imperial residence of King Jing, Lu Yurong was wearing a white tunic as she sat quietly in a gazebo above the lake. She looked at the fish swimming in the lake as her thoughts drifted. The 7 women who had been following her closely were scattered around. Some were in the flower beds, some were in the gazebo, and some were in the waterside pavilion. They were all busy with their own things. Footsteps could be heard as Lu Guangdi, dressed in a blue tunic, slowly walked over. His handsome face had a bright smile as he stepped onto the corridor and slowly walked to the gazebo. He gave a fist salute. Greetings, Miss Lu. Lu Yurong waved her hand and did not even look at him. Lu Guangdi looked at her jade-like face. It was extremely charming and beautiful. Under the reflection of the ripples on the lake, her almond-shaped eyes were even more captivating. Her red lips were even more tender and alluring. He loved her so much that he had a strong urge to pull her into his arms and hug her tightly without letting go. However, a strand of rationality made him restrain himself. He knew that once he reached out, he would not be greeted by a soft and fragrant body. Instead, he would be attacked like a storm. Even if he did not die, he would still be skinned alive. "What is it?" Lu Yurong looked at the lake and asked calmly. Lu Guangdi said, "I heard that Chu Li has returned to the public house. I want to challenge him." "There's no need to humiliate yourself," Lu Yurong said calmly. Lu Guangdi laughed. "How would you know if you haven't fought him?" Lu Yurong turned to look at him and said calmly, "Can you defeat me?" Lu Guangdi shook his head. It was not that he had not fought before, but he was covered in dirt and was in a sorry state. He had always been confident that his mind-reading ability was useless against her. Lu Yurong said, "I'm not Chu Li's opponent." Lu Guangdi smiled. "Everything has its counter. Miss Lu, you can counter me, but I might be able to counter Chu Li as well." "You're relying on your ability to read other people's minds, right?" Lu Yurong said calmly. Lu Guangdi was stunned. He did not expect Lu Yurong to be able to see through his special skill. Lu Yurong said, "Your ability is not even worth mentioning in front of Chu Li. Miss Lu, why are you trying to boost his morale? Is Chu Li really that scary?" Lu Guangdi shook his head and smiled. "He's quite famous, but he might not be that powerful." He was very unconvinced. Even if Chu Li's martial arts were stronger than his, he might still be able to defeat him. With his special skill, his chances would increase greatly. Madame Chu could counter his special skill, but Chu Li might not be able to. Lu Yurong scoffed. "Do you think your special skill will work on him?" Lu Guangdi was stunned. Lu Yurong said, "You can't read his mind at all. You won't last more than 10 moves against him. Don't embarrass King Jing's imperial residence." Lu Guangdi frowned and did not say anything. It seemed like Chu Li could also counter his mind-reading ability. "How detestable," Lu Yurong said calmly. "Chu Li is not like Shao Qi. He's cruel and merciless. If you challenge him, even if you don't die, you'll be crippled. Tide Listening Pavilion's hopes are all on you, so be careful." "Miss Lu, don't worry. My light body technique is not bad." Lu Yurong scoffed. "Your light body technique is no different from walking in front of him. Miss Lu, why do you think so highly of Chu Li?" Lu Guangdi smiled. "Don't tell me you like him?" Chapter 1132. P.S. Under normal circumstances, it's at 12 a.m. and 6 p.m. at 3 p.m. Lu Guangdi slapped his forehead and pretended to be annoyed. "Look at me, I forgot that Chu Li already has a wife." Lu Yurong glanced at him and said, "What are you trying to say?" Lu Guangdi shook his head and said, "I misunderstood. Miss Lu, you're talented and beautiful, how could you fall for a married man? You're the lady of the public house, how could you be someone's concubine? Furthermore, the Ren public house and the E public house are enemies. It seems like I was overthinking it." Lu Yurong said faintly, "Not bad, little Lu. You're so weird and you're fighting with your words. You're mocking me, aren't you?" "I wouldn't dare." Lu Guangdi hurriedly waved his hand and pretended to be afraid. Lu Yurong said, "Do you think that I wouldn't dare to do anything to you because His Royal Highness thinks highly of you and you're fearless?" "I wouldn't dare." Lu Guangdi laughed. Lu Yurong coldly said, "Then shut your mouth. If you're not happy, then go and challenge Chu Li." "Really?" Lu Guangdi was stunned. Why did Miss Lu agree? Lu Yurong said, "I want to see how you die." Lu Guangdi laughed. "Miss Lu, you think too highly of Chu Li. No matter how powerful he is, he can't stop me if I want to leave. King An's imperial residence isn't a tiger's den. Even if it is, I'll still go." "Alright, let me see what you're made of." Lu Yurong scoffed. Lu Guangdi said, "Then Miss Lu, just watch the show. Then go and challenge him tomorrow." Lu Yurong said, Don't let Chu Li leave again if you're too late, he's a busy man now. Alright. Lu Guangdi scoffed. Lu Yurong's praise of Chu Li made him very angry. He was just a small chief. Not only was Lu Yurong the lady of the public house, she was also talented and beautiful, far surpassing any woman in the world. She was a woman who looked down on all men in the world, yet she was praising a small chief. If he did not defeat Chu-Li, how could he vent his anger? After he returned to his courtyard, he immediately started cultivating and went to bed early to recharge. The next morning, he woke up early, full of energy and excitement. His whole body was full of fighting spirit, and he felt that every part of his body was excited. Today, he must trample on Chu-Li, ruthlessly trample on him, kick him to the ground, and become famous overnight. At that time, let's see if Lu Yurong can still be so arrogant and look down on me. He had changed into a green robe, which made his face look even more like jade. He was upright and confident as he slowly walked out of King Jing's imperial residence. Step by step, he arrived outside of King An's imperial residence. Finally, he stood at the bottom of the steps of King An's imperial residence with his hands behind his back. He ignored the two protectors beside the stone lion and raised his voice. "Where is Chu-Li? Lu Guangdi from King Jing's imperial residence is here to ask for advice." His voice slowly and calmly spread to every corner of King An's imperial residence, allowing everyone to hear him clearly. After his voice swept through every corner of King An's imperial residence, it continued to spread outwards, sweeping through a few miles and entering everyone's ears. In a flash, Chu-Li appeared on the steps of the main entrance of King An's imperial residence and looked down at him. Chu-Li's white robe fluttered in the wind as he frowned at Lu Guangdi. His expression was as dark as still water. "You're Lu Guangdi? That's me." Lu Guangdi proudly puffed out his chest and said, "Chu-Li of the north and Du Feng of the south, what a great reputation. However, it's hard to live up to your reputation. Today, I'm here to meet Chu-Li of the north and see just how capable you are." Chu-Li shook his head and smiled. "Lu Yurong came to look for me yesterday." "What do you mean?" Lu Guangdi frowned at him. Chu-Li smiled with his hands behind his back. "She came to plead on your behalf. She said that you're a rare talent and that it would be a pity to cripple you. She asked me to show mercy." "Impossible!" Lu Guangdi's face instantly turned red as he angrily shouted, "Nonsense!" Chu-Li smiled. "Whether I'm talking nonsense or not, you can ask Lu Yurong when you get back. In her eyes, you're just a naughty child who's a little mischievous. You need to be taught a lesson." Lu Guangdi angrily shouted, "Shut up!" Chu-Li said, "Enough with the nonsense. Let's see what you've got. Take this." Lu Guangdi roared as he mercilessly struck out with his palm. His chest was boiling with murderous intent. Only by killing Chu-Li would he be able to wash away this humiliation. Being looked down upon by the woman he liked, and having to plead for another man to show mercy, this feeling made him feel extremely aggrieved. He noticed that Chu-Li was shrouded in an invisible force. He could not tell what Chu-Li was thinking at all. There was an invisible pressure coming from Chu-Li. Deep down, he was starting to believe Lu Yurong's words. This Chu-Li was indeed powerful. If he wanted to defeat him, he would have to give it his all. He did not hold back as he unleashed his rolling wave palm to its limit. His entire cultivation was concentrated in this palm strike. Bang! Chu-Li's palm struck out. The two palm energies collided in the air and let out a dull sound. The rolling wave palm force originally came in waves, but as soon as the first wave passed, it had already been pushed back by Chu-Li's palm energy. Lu Guangdi did not even have the chance to dodge. The palm energy that was pushed back had already arrived in front of him and sent him flying. Chu-Li appeared behind him in a flash and gave him a light slap. Lu Guangdi's body stiffened. His acupuncture point was sealed and he fell to the ground. Blood was already flowing out from the corner of his mouth. Chu Li shook his head and looked down at Lu Guangdi. He sighed. You have great ambition but little talent. You're nothing more than this. You can't even withstand a single blow. You. Lu Guangdi wanted to say something but could not. His mouth was filled with the taste of blood. His chest was filled with discomfort and his vision was turning black. His killing intent and hatred were about to explode. He only had endless killing intent towards Chu Li. He was even more furious at himself. He felt that he had failed to live up to his expectations. He could not even withstand a single attack from Chu Li. Chu Li turned to look at the roof not far away. Yurong, since you're here, why are you still hiding? A white shadow flashed. Lu Yurong floated down from the roof and landed in front of Chu Li. She said angrily, "You've gone too far." She was dressed in a white tunic that was flawless. Her face was covered with a white veil, revealing only a pair of beautiful eyes. Chu Li smiled. "Didn't I do what you asked me to and not kill him? This is more than enough. He came knocking on my door, yet I let him go. If everyone was like him, would I still have a peaceful life? I was planning to use him to establish my authority." "You always have a reason." Lu Yurong rolled her eyes at him and scoffed. "Are you satisfied now? I should be the one asking that question." Chu Li laughed. "You'll remember this favor. Take him away." Lu Yurong scoffed. Release his acupuncture point. She had guessed Chu Li's tactics. He would continue to humiliate Lu Guangdi. He had to make sure that Lu Guangdi would not be able to recover from this setback. Otherwise, he would become a formidable opponent in the future. For a proud young man like Lu Guangdi, it would be very difficult for him to stand up again once he was defeated too badly. Based on her calculations, even if she brought Lu Guangdi back to King Jing's imperial residence, she might not be able to release Chu Li's acupuncture point. He could only let his acupuncture point release on its own. If it were her, she would have done the same thing. Chu Li was essentially the same type of person as her, so he would probably do the same thing. Chu Li shook his head and laughed. "You're really gauging the heart of a gentleman with your own mean measure." He stepped forward and lightly patted Lu Guangdi's chest. Lu Guangdi felt his body relax as he regained his freedom. He took a deep breath. His eyes seemed to be burning as he glared at Chu Li. "Chu Li, I will never forget what you've done for me today." Chu Li smiled. "All right, your martial arts might be the strongest in your Tide Listening Pavilion, but it's nothing in the fairy's capital. Go back and train for a few years before coming out again." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.